Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you're watching second part of What If Kid Naruto Awaken an Unknown Power and was raised by Kyuubi and Kushina. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Naruto shuffled around Mocha's lap, attempting to settle in, and asked, "Why would someone like the Mizukage be our target?" "It is because a group of rebels requested our help, and also offered to give Konoha 15% of their mission income over the next year if we were able to help them get rid of the Mizukage and replace him with their group's leader, as well as pay us a hefty price for the mission. Also you three will be meeting the group at the border of Water Country," said the Hokage. Mocha, who is the silver-haired version of herself, asked absently as she fiddled with Naruto's hair, "So when must we leave?" The third said inquisitively, "Immediately, but before you go, I would like to know why none of you are wearing your headbands." The three of them left the room in their own distinctive teleportation jutsus, with the exception of Naruto, who stuck with Flash Step. "It is because Mizore-chan and Mocha-chan follow me, not the Leaf Village, and as for the reason why I do not wear one is simply because there are too many people in this village that look at me with contempt and hate in their eyes, but I will admit that there seems to be more people that look to me with respect now given who I now, but still, until I see that this village's hatred and contempt towards me has died. Naruto, when I looked in your eyes, I finally realized that you are not the same child I remember, and your eyes no longer hold the warmth that once did." The elderly Hokage sighed and leaned back in his chair, letting his advanced age finally show. "I was able to see that deep in your eyes you no longer seem to care for anyone. Those two girls with you seem to be the only ones you care about, and I doubt you even understand your true feelings for them," the Hokage said with a sigh before returning to his never-ending paperwork. "You will never understand your true power until you let yourself understand your emotions." Kushina gazed at the troubled-looking fox demon and asked, "Kyuubi-sama, is something wrong?" No, Kushina, there is nothing wrong. I was just listening to the words of a wise old man," said the Kyuubi, and as Kushina nodded and walked away he started saying, "You really are a wise old monkey to have been able to figure all that out with just looking into Naruto's eyes." And with a sad smirk the fox continued his rant, "Naruto will never be able to learn my name if continues living the way he is now. For only if he can find his resolve to fight and will live can he hear my name. But he will first need to learn to understand his emotions, and to do that the barrier that he has put around his heart must crumble." With a deep breath the legendary Kitsune continued, "Though it is true that Mizore, Mocha, and even his brother Itachi have slipped through the cracks and have gotten into his heart, he may love the three of them, but it is such a foreign emotion to him and he cannot understand the depth of how much he loves the three of them and how much they truly mean to him, especially the two girls. I also fear he will never understand his own feelings and emotions until one of the three people he loves more than anything else dies, but I just pray that he comes to understand his own emotions before a tragedy like that occurs, because he will ever be the same again if that happens." And with that said, the fox just started walking away in search of a nice area to take a long-needed nap. Even though the powerful Baiju would have been able to spot her as easily as the Hokage can spot a new academy student, Kushina was hiding behind a tree close enough to hear Kyuubi's tirade. He was simply too depressed and preoccupied with his own tirade to notice her. Kushina said, "Have you really grown so cold that you can't even comprehend your own emotions, my son?" with a dejected and fallen expression. Standing outside the village gate on the north side, Naruto and his companions were making a quick check to make sure they had everything they needed, which was essentially just a few pairs of clothes. Mizore looked down at the tight black biker shorts that ended about a centimeter before her mid-thigh-laid socks, which she and Mocha were now wearing under their skirts. "Naruto-kun, why do we have to wear these again?" she asked. Mocha raised an eyebrow and said, "I am also curious to the reason you wish for us to wear these shorts under our skirts." Sighing, Naruto responded to their query, "It's because the two of you will be moving around a lot more now considering you will be fighting, and to wear only a mini-skirt that will probably lift up all of the time, which will let people get an eyeful of what you're wearing under your skirt, is not something I want happening," replied Naruto. With a slight sideways tilt, Mizore said, "So what you're saying is you don't want anyone else looking at the two of us?" "Exactly, Mizore-chan," Naruto remarked, letting out a little sigh as he considered, "but I will miss being able to look up your skirts myself." "Now that our question has been answered, shouldn't we get going?" asked Mocha. Naruto said, "You're right, but before we go, I need you to stay out of the seal a little longer than normal, at least until this mission is over, Mocha-chan." He was met with a smirking nod from Mocha, who was genuinely pleased that she would be able to spend a little more time outside the seal. Naruto said, "So let's start this mission," and the three of them vanished as they were traveling toward Water Country, which was rather ironic considering how they had just arrived from that place. The following day, Naruto and company were just a few minutes away from their intended location at around 6 o'clock. Normally, it would have taken them at least 2 more days to reach their current location, but they managed to do so in a respectable amount of time because they ran the entire distance without stopping. Not even at night it didn't hurt to take a little break after running all day and all night, but the 3 of them also only stopped running an hour ago to get some rest, which they really didn't need because they were demons and had ridiculously high stamina. The 3 of them were walking in silence when Mocha put her arm around the back of Naruto's neck and her hand dangling absently over his left chest. Mizore was on his left, holding his hand, and Naruto looked up at Mocha as he said, "Mocha-chan, I've always been curious to why the sun doesn't affect you like how stories say it affects vampires." Naruto's eyebrows raised slightly, and Mizore leaned in a little closer since she had also always wondered. "Well, that is just a stereotype, and we vampires are not affected by the sun at all, but water does weaken vampires, and that formation is just between the 3 of us because I don't need the whole world knowing my weakness," Mocha said in her trademark serious voice. Interrupting their conversation, Mizore asked, "So how do you take showers?" After she said, "I do not take showers," Mizore and Naruto gave her a suspicious look, but then they heard her add, "I take baths that have special herbs in the water which neutralize the water's natural purifying effect on me." In his typically composed tone, Naruto questioned, "I see, then would a stake through the heart be the only way to kill you as well?" Mocha responded, "That is also just a misconception, but it still would possibly kill me." But the 3 of them felt they had reached their destination because of the numerous chakra signatures that were now all around them. A large man with broad shoulders, at least 7 feet tall, wearing a Junin outfit with Enbu armor, an eye patch over his left eye, long black spiked hair with bells at the end of each spike, and a sword on the left side of his waist, asked, "So who are you 3 and what are you doing in Water Country?" "We have been sent here by the Hokage to aid in the assassination of the Mizukage," Naruto declared, unflinchingly looking directly into the eyes of the much larger man. The man with narrowed eyes said, "So, if you're the ninja that were sent to help us, then where's your headbands?" Placing his hand on the hilt of his sword, this only made Mizore and Mocha tense up and get ready for a fight until Naruto raised his hand, signaling them to back down, which they did, albeit hesitantly. When Naruto said, "There is no need for alarm, the reason we are not wearing a headband is because the Hokage does not want other countries knowing that the Leaf Village was part of the assassination of another village's Kage. You know, bad publicity among other political type reasons." Mizore and Mocha looked at him, both of them knowing that he was lying through his teeth because they knew that the only reason they didn't wear their headbands was because Naruto didn't want to, but they couldn't help but smirked at him. "I see your point," the man said, raising his right hand in the air and waving it slightly to signal his men to emerge from hiding. A moment later, 10 ninja, all of whom were mid-Chunin to Enbu level and dressed in standard Junin attire and Enbu armor, emerged from hiding. As the group of ninja emerged from hiding, Mocha remarked, "I assume there are more to your resistance than just this." "Yes, there are more at the base, but before we go there I want to know why the Hokage sent us 2 teenage girls and kid for such a high-ranked mission," replied the man with an eyebrow raised. In her bored voice, Mizore explained, "Because the Hokage knows we can handle it," as she reattached her with Naruto's and Mocha put her arm back around his neck because there was still a chance of an attack. "As long as the 3 of you can get the job done, I guess I really don't care how old you are," replied the individual. "So seeing as how we're going to be working together for the time being, you should know that I'm the leader of this resistance as well as the former leader of the 7 Swords Men of the Mist. Kenpachi Zaraki at your service." To anyone that's wondering, yes, this is the same Zaraki Kenpachi from Bleach, said the newly minted Zaraki with a twisted smile. Kenpachi pointed to Mizore and Mocha before addressing Naruto. "So do the 3 of you have a name, or should I just call you girl and kid?" she asked. Naruto pointed to Shirayuki Mizore, who simply waved lazily at the rebels. "This is Shirayuki Mizore," Naruto said. "And this is Akashiya Mocha," Naruto said, pointing to Mocha, who simply stared at them all with her red-slitted eyes, frightening everyone who looked at her. Zaraki couldn't help but think, and here I was thinking I wasn't afraid of anything, but then he noticed the frightening silver-haired girl's gaze was on him. He couldn't help but shiver as he looked into those emotionless crimson eyes, but he quickly smirked and asked, "What about you, kid, or do you not have a name?" The name he heard Naruto say next was definitely not what he had anticipated hearing. "My name is Naruto Kuchiki," one of the group's ninjas exclaimed. "Wait, you mean you're the Naruto Kuchiki, the last member of the legendary clan from the destroyed Whirlpool country? I love not having to give an introduction about myself, since my reputation always seems to do it for me," Naruto laughed. Mocha said gravely, "Naruto-kun, you shouldn't get so cocky about yourself." Sighing, Naruto said, "I know." Kenpachi grinned as they all leapt into the trees, Naruto and company trailing closely behind. So that old Hokage sent us someone worthwhile after all, Saku Kitsune, but anyway we might as well head off to the base, so you three just follow us and try to keep up, she said. When the group reached a grassy clearing with a mountain ahead of them that was roughly a mile high, a mile wide, and 2 miles long at the base in front of them, Mocha asked, "So, where is your base?" Mocha, Mizore, and Naruto all raised an eyebrow at Kenpachi's sly smile as he said, "Haven't you ever heard the saying to look underneath the underneath?" Kenpachi said, "Just watch and you'll see," as he approached the mountain, brandished his sword, and carved a few symbols into its side. After completing the symbols, a portion of the mountain the size of a door vanished, and Kenpachi began to move through the pitch-black tunnel. As they began to follow Kenpachi's group, Mizore remarked, "I guess we might as well follow." They finally arrived at a sizable, unadorned room that appeared to have been excavated from the mountain. As they made their way through the dimly lit cave like the rest of the cave, it was decorated with candles on its walls. In addition, there was a big square table in the center of the space with 6 chairs on either side and 1 at each end, for a total of 14 chairs. Ironically, just enough for the group that entered the room. Kenpachi sat at the head of the left side of the table, Naruto at the head of the right, and Mizore and Mocha on either side of him. "Now if everyone could take a seat, we can get down to business," he said. When Kenpachi finished, Naruto simply nodded for him to continue, which he did. "So, I might as well fill you 3 in on what's been going on and also how we plan to attack the Mizukage," he said. "So a week ago we received a tip from an inside source that told us the Mizukage would be leaving his nice and safe little office in order to meet with the Raikage about an alliance tomorrow, so we will hold a surprise attack right before he crosses Water Country's border," stated Kenpachi. "What if this is just some trap to lure your group out in the open, so the Mizukage can get rid of all of you?" replied Naruto. "That is a very likely possibility since we have been a thorn in his side for quite some time, but still even if it is a trap we will never get such an opportunity at killing him because as you know Naruto it's not every day that a kage leaves the safety of his village," replied Kenpachi. "So I'm guessing we will attack him tomorrow," Mocha replied. Kenpachi pointed to a location on the map that was laid out on the table and said, "Yes, we will. He will be crossing the border here tomorrow morning at around 2 p.m. That's where we will wait to ambush him with 100 of my ninja, while I have 30 medic ninjas standing in the back in order to treat the wounded while the last 20 of my men stay hidden in the trees and will only join the battle if we start losing. Basically they're our backup. Also if I know that weasel of a Mizukage he'll be guarded by 6 Anbu with 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and 1 on each side of him. Also he probably is planning an ambush just like you said earlier Naruto, so he'll probably have anywhere from 50 to 60. Maybe 70 Anbu tops hiding in the trees. If he is planning a trap then of course there's the Mizukage himself. Basically we outnumber them, but not all of my ninja are Anbu level so that does leave us at a disadvantage and even more so considering that I'll have to use my energy in taking down the Mizukage," Kenpachi sighed. Naruto's comment, "You seem to be forgetting about us Kenpachi Zaraki," caught everyone's attention. "I'll take care of the Mizukage myself while Mizore-chan and Mocha-chan assist your forces in dealing with the enemy Anbu, freeing you up to assist your men. Additionally, you should be aware that Mizore-chan and Mocha-chan are extremely strong individuals, so you will have a slight advantage in battle while they fight alongside you. Are you sure you can handle the Mizukage on your own, kid? Since this is probably our only chance to get rid of that tyrant, I don't want any mistakes," Kenpachi said gravely and with narrowed eyes. "If we are unable to perform the duties for which we were hired, what good would it do to hire us?" Naruto inquired. He just got a nod from Naruto. "Okay then kid, you will deal with the Mizukage, but just remember that the outcome of your fight with him will determine the future of the village hidden in the mist, so don't let us down Saku Kitsune," said Kenpachi. Kenpachi remarked, "Okay then, meeting adjourned, and also this guy will be showing you 3 to your room." Before rising and departing for his own quarters the other men followed suit, leaving only Naruto, Mocha, Mizore, and an unidentified ninja with short brown hair, an average build, and a height of roughly 5 feet 9. Naruto simply began to follow, with Mocha and Mizore trailing closely behind. "If you 3 will please follow me I will show you to your quarters," the ninja said as he turned around and began to walk to a hallway to the left. The ninja began to move down the hallway and vanished as he turned down another one. "So this is your room, and breakfast is in the mess hall at 8 and ends at 10, seeing as how we leave at 10 o'clock tomorrow in order to ambush the Mizukage, so I guess I'll just get out of your hair now," he said. "We might as well change," Naruto said, entering the bathroom to give the girls some privacy as he watched him go. The door opened to reveal a simple room with a bathroom and a lamp on the desk to the right of the queen-sized bed. "You had better not try to peek at us while we were changing Naruto," a sly Mocha said. Naruto turned to face Mocha, who now had a tick mark on her forehead, and said, "I'm sorry, did you say something?" Before he knew it, she threw a pillow in his face hard enough to send him flying into the bathtub, the door closing in front of him because he was still holding onto the doorknob as he went in, forcing him to pull the door shut. Mizore couldn't contain his laughter at what they were doing. Given that she was still furious over Naruto's previous remark, Mocha asked menacingly, "What the hell are you laughing at?" "Nothing, nothing," Mizore said, simply waving Mocha away. Wearing his regular boxers with foxes on them and a t-shirt, Naruto emerged to find Mizore in her usual blue nightgown, already in bed and unconscious, and Mocha in a pink one. Naruto crawled between them, only to find himself a little squashed because a queen-sized bed was too small for 3 people, but he wasn't complaining because he truly loved being so close to them. After sensing Naruto moving behind her, Mocha simply turned around and gave him a tight embrace while staring him in the eyes and muttering, "You're moving around too much." "Sorry Mocha-chan, I didn't mean to wake you up." Mocha smiled softly and said, "It's okay, I much prefer to go to sleep holding you close like this." Naruto thought this was a little strange because he didn't see this version of Mocha smile like that very often, but before he could think about it, Mocha pulled him closer until his face was in her chest, which made him blush and struggle a little bit to create a little more space between them. That is, until Mocha began whispering in his ear, "You don't need to be so embarrassed or shy around me so much because I don't really mind what you do to me or what you see as long as I say it's okay. So just relax and go to sleep," Mocha said in the sweetest and gentlest way possible. Naruto felt a little more at ease after she said that, so he put his arms around her waist and cuddled up to her before falling asleep quickly and saying, "I love you, Mocha-chan." After saying, "I love you" to my little Naru-chan, Naruto went out like a light. However, before Mocha fell asleep, she heard Mizore murmur, "No Naruto-kun, that's too big, it won't fit in my mouth." Mocha blushed a little as she said, "What kid of dirty dreams do you have, Mizore?" before she too fell asleep. Mizore's dream on the side. Mizore blushed as she began to approach Naruto. "Naruto-kun, that lollipop is too big to fit in my mouth, but there is something that you have that I would like to suck on," she said. Simply raising an eyebrow at her, Naruto remarked, "But I don't have anything else for you to suck on, Mizore-chan." Mizore stood in front of him and slowly dropped to her knees as Naruto stared at her inquisitively. She smirked and said, "Yes you do," at which point she swiftly undid his trousers. When Naruto finally awoke from his comfortable sleep, he saw that Mocha continued to hold him tightly and wouldn't let go until she woke up. He also saw that he was now facing Mizore, and he couldn't help but raise an inquisitive eyebrow at the fact that she was breathing a little strangely, had a slight flush on her cheeks, had her lips slightly parted, and was perspiring a little as he looked at Mizore. He couldn't help but think that she looked very cute at the moment, with her cheeks flushed and her lips slightly parted. "It will seem a bit cliché to wake you up like this, Mizore-chan, but I just can't resist," Naruto said, beginning to close his eyes and lean in to give Mizore a gentle kiss to wake her up from her bad dream. Or at least the bad dream Naruto believed she was having, as Mizore was actually having a very good dream at the moment. Mizore's dream, "It's probably not the best you've ever read because this is my first lemon." Since this is Mizore's dream, they are both in a snow-covered field during the day at the moment. Mizore was kneeling in front of Naruto in the snow-covered ground, his cock in her mouth, and she was rapidly bobbing her head up and down. Naruto also had his hands on the back of Mizore's head, breathing rapidly, and his face was slightly flushed. Naruto grunted, "Mizore-chan, it feels like I'm going to burst," and Mizore stopped sucking him off. She then pulled her head back, allowing his 6-inch member, keep in mind that he's only 12, so he won't have anything huge, to pop out of her mouth. "You stopped, Mizore-chan, but why?" Mizore got back up and said, "Because it's too early for us to be finished yet." Naruto just stared at her inquisitively, not understanding what she was saying because he had never been taught about sex. "Now, Mizore-chan, what are we going to do?" Mizore smirked as she removed her sweater, exposing her black bra underneath. "Just be patient and you'll see," she said. Mizore swiftly removed her skirt and black biker shorts and kicked them to the side so that she was now only standing in front of Naruto wearing a black bra and matching underwear. Naruto couldn't help but blush as he watched her remove her sweater, and the fact that their height difference meant that Mizore's chest was directly in his face didn't help him feel any less embarrassed. Before Naruto could ask her what she had met, Mizore said, "Now the fun starts, Naruto-kun." She gave him a hard shove, causing him to lose his balance and fall back onto the snow-covered ground with a slight crunch. As soon as he was lying on the ground, Mizore leapt on him, straddling his waist. "What should we do now, Mizore-chan?" In response to Naruto's question, Mizore simply unclasped her bra and took it off. leaning slightly closer to him so that her chest was directly in front of him. Naruto's only response was to become the darkest shade of red he had ever been because he was staring at Mizore's chest. Just do what feels natural, Naruto-kun. Following her advice, Naruto slowly grabbed Mizore's breasts and began massaging them to see how they felt. She couldn't help but moan a little from the sensations she was getting from Naruto's breast rubs, and after a little while, Naruto began to feel a little more at ease with a slight flush of embarrassment on his face. He put Mizore's right breast in his mouth and began to rub circles around her nipple with his tongue while continuing to massage her left breast with his right hand while holding her back. Mizore let out a startled cry when she felt Naruto's mouth touch her breast. Additionally, she was beginning to feel extremely hot between the knees, so she decided she could play no longer and removed her underwear without Naruto noticing. Once she had done that, she sat up, straddling his waist. Naruto remarked, "You look beautiful, Mizore-chan," after he finally had a chance to see her nude while she was straddling him. As she said, "Thank you, Naruto-kun, but I want to really get started now, so just don't move because since I'm still a virgin it'll hurt if you move around too much." Mizore blushed a little and turned away. Then, just like when she shoved him in the snow, she hurriedly put his member at her entrance and slammed it down before Naruto could question her. After noticing the slightly distressed expression on her face, Naruto inquired, "Are you okay, Mizore-chan?" "Yeah, I'm okay, Naruto-kun, but just don't move yet." He couldn't help but wonder, what doesn't she want me to move? Given how dim Naruto is, especially since no one ever taught him about sex. After sitting there for a minute or so, Mizore began to move up and down and groan a little as she grew accustomed to having Naruto inside of her. After a few minutes, both Mizore and Naruto were hammering away at each other as quickly as they could. With Mizore on top and Naruto still on the bottom, Naruto couldn't help but gasp when he felt Mizore begin to move. As she finally arrived, Mizore exclaimed, "Naruto-kun, I'm about to come." Naruto ultimately ended up coming with her subsequently. Mizore collapsed on Naruto, both of them breathing wildly. Mizore's lips smashed against Naruto's heart as she looked up, and she gave him a rough kiss for the next few minutes. After kissing him for a while, she put her head on his chest, closed her eyes, and muttered, "I wish that this was real." Lemon End Dream. When Mizore opened her eyes slowly, she noticed that Naruto was kissing her lightly. Am I still dreaming?" she asked, questioningly, with a shocked expression. However, since she wasn't the type to stare a gift horse in the mouth, she closed her eyes and pressed her mouth against his, causing him to give a startled eep. She also attempted to put her arms around him, but instead ended up putting them around Mocha, who was behind him. This caused Naruto to become squished between the two girls as Mizore continued to kiss him hungrily and pressed herself against him more. Mocha opened her eyes slowly and asked herself, "Why'd I feel like I'm being smashed into something?" She saw Mizore rubbing herself against Naruto and kissing him as if there were no tomorrow. Naturally, she grabbed Mizore and yanked her away from Naruto. Throwing her to the left side of the bed, she then sat up and placed Naruto on her lap, observing his face, which was slightly flushed, his eyes half open, and a smirk. Mocha looked at Mizore, who was sitting against the wall with a wavy expression on her face due to being thrown across the room and into a wall, and asked, "Naruto, did she try anything inappropriate with you besides kissing?" "Mizore-chan a great kisser," was all Naruto could manage to say in a dreamy voice. Apparently, Mocha didn't like that response too much because she twitched her eyebrow and threw him into the shower a few inches to Mizore's right. Even though she consented to share Naruto with Mizore, Mocha was still the jealous type and didn't particularly enjoy seeing her make out with him. "Why don't you take a cold shower and cool off?" she said in a cold voice as she threw a pillow at the bathroom door, effectively closing it with a bang. She couldn't help but sigh as she turned back to face the swirling-eyed Mizore and uttered the words, "I wonder how this battle is going to end." Kenpachi and the other members of the rebel faction were currently hiding up in a tree with Naruto, Mocha, and Mizore, waiting for the Mizukage to arrive. Since it was already 2 p.m., he was expected to arrive at any moment. Naruto pointed to a young girl, no older than 8 or 10, with green eyes and pink hair, dressed in a Junin outfit and a short sword strapped to her waist. "Kenpachi, Mizore, and Mocha just have to know why you have that on your shoulder," Naruto said. "Well, this is Yachiru, and she's my niece," she said, grinning and waving at everyone. Mocha questioned, "Where are her parents and why is she here when we are about to have a battle?" Kenpachi smirked and said, "Her parents are dead, so I took her in. As for why she's here, don't let her age fool you because she's actually strong enough to go head to head with any experienced Chunin or low Junin." Yachiru continued to smile. Mocha simply nodded in agreement. Naruto remarked, "Well, it looks like talking's over," as he watched the Mizukage and his Anbu guard approach. As he signaled for everyone to start the sneak attack, Kenpachi exclaimed, Just remember kid to go straight for the Mizukage and not waste your time or energy with anyone else now everyone go. Mizore-chan and Mocha-chan, just be careful. Mocha said, we will and you be careful too Naruto-kun, before she, Mizore, and Naruto leapt to the ground with the other rebels. A man about 6 feet tall in Mizukage robes remarked, so predictable, as he noticed a sizable contingent of ninja sprinting in his direction. When the Mizukage and his 6 Anbu guards were within 20 meters of the rebels, he and they fled toward a clearing to the right. As soon as the Mizukage began to flee, at least 60 mist Anbu rushed out of the trees behind him, engulfing the 100 rebel ninjas. As he pursued the Mizukage, all he could think about was, stay safe Mocha-chan and Mizore-chan. Kenpachi yelled out to Naruto, Naruto go after the Mizukage, the rest of us will handle the Anbu. Naruto broke away from the rebels, leaving Mocha and Mizore alone. Kenpachi exclaimed with excitement, now let the fun begin. As he and the rebels engaged the Anbu in a titanic battle that would decide the fate of the village buried in the mist. As he signaled to the 6 Anbu who were following him to stop, the Mizukage said, we're far enough so we might as well take it easy from here on out. They were now about 100 meters away from the fighting, which was close enough to observe the fighting but far enough away that none of the rebels fighting could notice them. However, the Mizukage and the Anbu who was with him stopped dead in their tracks when they realized that the area's gravity had at least increased 5-fold. Naruto emerged from the trees a few yards from the Mizukage and Anbu, asking, where do you think you are going, Mizukage? The Anbu regained some of his backbone after realizing that the strange pressure was being released by a child. Stay back Mizukage-sama, I'll handle this, it is just a kid after all, he said. As he went through hand signals, Naruto simply stared at the Anbu as he approached him impassively and yelled, water style, liquid bullet. The ninja then threw a ball of water at Naruto, who simply stood there, raising his right arm and pointing at the liquid bullet with his middle finger and pointer finger while uttering, Hado 33, Sukatsui, blue fire crashed down, and then a powerful, ghostly blue flame formed and shot out of his fingers at the liquid bullet. He then launched the attack, hitting the Anbu square in the chest, sending him a few yards away with a large burn mark on his chest because the fire was so hot, it ended up frying all the organs in his chest, killing him. One of the 5 surviving Anbu exclaimed in a terrified tone, how the hell did he do that without any hand seals? Who the fuck cares how he did it, because the real question is where the fuck did he go? Exclaimed another Anbu member upon realizing Naruto had vanished at that moment. They all heard the Anbu in the back stab him in the stomach and heart and fall dead on his face. They were also shocked to see Naruto standing behind the now dead Anbu, his sword drawn and covered in blood, when he fell. As he watched the Anbu in front of him start to perspire and lose their composure, Naruto said, that was called Senka, which is an advanced version of my flash step technique that allows me to get behind my opponents and stab them through the stomach and heart, creating a fast, quiet and efficient way of killing my opponents. The Mizukage, however, was simply observing Naruto's skills calmly because he knew his Anbu wouldn't be able to defeat this boy in front of him now. The Mizukage stepped up as though to imply that he would now engage Naruto in combat. All of you go join the rest of the Anbu that are fighting the rebels, he said. But sir, no buts, this kid is out of your league so you will only get in my way. Reluctantly, the mist Anbu nodded before departing to take part in the conflict. So now that they are out of the way, how about we get started here? The Mizukage said, removing his cage robes to reveal a battle kimono with black lining and navy blue armor plating. He also had a sword hilt on his waist, and, when he removed his hat, he showed off his short silver hair, sickly friendly smile, and closed eyes that gave him the appearance of a fox. My name is Jin Ichimaru. I am the Mizukage and I assume you're the famous child prodigy Naruto Kuchiki aka the Saku Kitsune. You are correct Jin Ichimaru, Jin said. Well then I think it's time we begin, as he vanished and, shocking Naruto with his speed, materialized in front of him. He then swiftly punched him in the face, sending Naruto skidding a few meters away. When he finally stopped, he wiped the blood off his now slightly swollen bottom lip. You are faster than I would have expected Jin. Jin simply grinned at him as he removed the sword hilt from his waist with his right hand. To Naruto's amazement, the sword hilt was now pointing directly at him and began to form a 4-foot blade out of ice. Jin exclaimed, let me show you a very interesting ability of this sword of mine. Now impale him Shinzo. As the ice sword expanded and sped in the direction of a startled Naruto, who narrowly avoided the blade but still suffered a shallow cut on his right arm from his surprise. When Naruto opened his eyes, they showed the formidable Sakugan of the Kuchiki clan. It seems I'm going to have to fight you seriously if I wish to win, he said. Jin was startled enough to back off when he saw those piercing pink, Slightly glowing eyes with 4 blue tones surrounding his black-slitted pupil. Naruto also drew Senbon Sakura while releasing all of his SP even though he was the Mizukage. Jin was clearly bothered by Naruto's amazing SP force, which was pressing down on him with enough force to knock an Anbu captain to his knees. Naruto, looking a little excited, rushed Jin and Jin rushed him back. Their swords collided with a clang, signaling the start of their epic battle. I am actually happy you are so strong, Jin Ichimaru, because now I can use my full power and finally test my limits against a worthy opponent, so now the real fight begins, Naruto said. An approaching kunai was just caught by Mocha, who threw it back at the enemy Anbu with such force that it passed through his skull and 3 other unwary Anbu. It continued to travel until it passed through a boulder and halfway through a tree. A 2-foot ice spike halfway down the back of another Anbu caused him to fall to the ground on his face. When Mocha turned around at that moment, she saw Mizore approaching her, her hair frozen, and her hands transformed into larger, ice-like claw hands, each with 4 large claws. Our group is losing, aren't they, Mocha? Mocha responded with a sigh after sidestepping a blow and elbowing the Anbu in the head, breaking his skull and killing him. We definitely are at more of a tie now, considering the enemy had 30 extra Anbu come to help, so even with the 20 extra ninja we have that joined the fight, we're down to about 80 ninja and the enemy is at probably 60 because of their 30 ninja reinforcement group. Before they could continue, both of their eyes widened a little as they experienced the unusual chakra of Naruto, which was a familiar, intense pressure. For Naruto to go all out like this, he must be in trouble, Mizore said anxiously, as she had never experienced Naruto displaying this level of strength. Mocha started to release some of her full demonic aura, but not enough to make the sky red or bring out the moon. Naruto is strong and can take care of himself, but just to be on the safe side we should really stop holding back and just finish this battle so we can help Naruto, she said. Mizore also stopped holding back because everything around her began to freeze, her eyes began to glow an unsettling light blue, and a demonic aura began to form around her. Before she and Mocha split up and ran into the remaining enemy Anbu with plans to swiftly end this battle, Mizore said, "Now let's finish this." At the moment, Naruto and Jin were battling for control of the situation while pushing against one another with their swords. "You really are a strong little brat," Jin muttered. The only answer Naruto gave was, "Scatter Senbon Sakura," and with that, his sword shattered 1,000 cherry petals, causing hundreds of gashes to slit Jin's body. Jin now had a shocked look on his face as he collapsed to the ground and facing water. Jin said, "I didn't think you would actually fall for that," as he smiled and opened his eyes to reveal crimson eyes just before stabbing Naruto in the back through the heart. Naruto merely gave Jin a wide-eyed stare before vanishing in a cloud of smoke, exposing himself as a mere shadow clone. Naruto pointed his palm directly at Jin and said, "Hado 32, Shikaho, shot of red fire," as a red ball of fire erupted from his palm and made its way directly toward Jin. Jin completed the final hand seal just before the attack struck, shouting, "Water style, water wall," and a wall of water encircled him to shield him from the blow. Jin completed the hand signs as fast as he could. He heard Naruto behind him as he said, "Hado number 4, Byakuri, white lightning." After Jin's attack had subsided, Jin attempted to get out of the way as fast as he could, but he was unable to do so in time, and a lightning bolt went through his bicep. "Water style, water dragon jutsu," Jin exclaimed as he completed the hand seals, attempting to ignore the pain from the hole in his left bicep and gaining enough distance from Naruto. While saying, "Scatter Senbon Sakura," Naruto simply sat there composedly. Then, as the sword spiraled around the approaching dragon and destroyed it, it scattered into 1,000 cherry petals. The sword shards continued to follow Jin, who leapt to the right to avoid it. When Jin opened his eyes and revealed his red eyes, a terrible smirk appeared on his face. He said, "Impale her, Shinzo," and thrust his right arm out, his sword pointing straight ahead. Naruto then swiftly glanced behind him and saw that the ice sword was headed for Mizore, who was coming toward him because she wanted to assist him in fighting the Mizukage. Before vanishing with a flash step, Naruto whispered, "Mizore," his eyes widening and his face taking on a worried expression. Blood dropped to the ground, and suddenly there was the sound of a sword tearing through flesh. Mizore looked at Naruto, who was now about a foot away from her and had an ice sword piercing his heart, with a startled and terrified expression on her face as her lollipop fell out of her mouth. Before the sword was violently torn from his chest, causing him to fall straight into the arms of the still shocked Mizore, Naruto said, "Mizore-chan, I'm glad you're all right." While he was drifting off to unconsciousness, Mizore placed Naruto on the ground and held his head in her lap. However, before he could do so, he heard Mizore sobbing and repeatedly whispering, "Please don't die, Naruto." "Mizore," Naruto muttered as he eventually passed out. When Naruto abruptly awoke, he saw that he was in his mind's landscape, where he would either meet Kyuubi or his mother. However, as he looked around, he saw that the sun was setting and the cherry trees were dying, neither of which would typically occur. "So you're awake, Naruto," Kyuubi said quietly. "What's going on here? Why does it look like everything is dying, and where is Ka-san?" "Everything here is dying because you are dying, and as for your Ka-san, well, she's not here at the moment." Naruto sighed. "So this is how it ends," he said. "I never thought you would give up so easily. Where is your Kuchiki clan pride? Where is your pride as the Prince of Demons? Will you let yourself be killed off by a pathetic human?" Kyuubi yelled with rage. Naruto snarled. "What do you expect me to do? If you don't want to live for your own sake, then how about you start thinking about those two girls that love you, Naruto? Will you really leave them and let them drift back into the world of loneliness that you rescued them from? And who will be there to protect them if you die? Have you also forgotten about the sacrifices that your brother Itachi has made for you? If you allow yourself to die now, all he did for you will have been for nothing. Will you really let all that he has sacrificed for you be for nothing, or will you stand back up and do what you know in your heart, mind, and soul is right?" Kyuubi said in an authoritative manner, his voice. The eyes of Naruto as he considered what Kyuubi had said. Naruto simply turned his head away, his face sad. With his resolve restored, Naruto gazed directly into Kyuubi's eyes and asked, "What must I do?" "Now that's the Naruto I know. We both know that you didn't use Bankai against Chin because, despite having mastered the technique, you lacked the control to maintain it for longer than a few minutes. However, I can give you the ability to use it effectively. All you have to do is rely on the real reason you fight and get stronger." "I'll ask you again. Why do you fight, Naruto? Or more accurately, for whom and what do you fight for? You need to examine your heart, rely on your genuine feelings, and allow that wall you built around your heart to fall down." Naruto simply closed his eyes and gave it some serious thought. He considered Itachi, Mizore, and Mocha, as well as the reasons he fights and his desire to get stronger. After a short while, he said, his eyes still closed, "I understand now, Kyuubi. I finally understand my resolve." "So, what is it? How determined are you?" Kyuubi asked, a smile spreading across his face as each second went by. When Naruto finally opened his eyes, they were crimson with a black four-sided pinwheel, similar to Itachi's Mangekyo Sharingan, but Naruto's new eyes had an extra side. "My resolve for the reason I fight and become stronger is for them, for the people I care for them I will do anything, and I will protect them with everything I am, and I will never die for the sake of protecting them, because if I die I will do it," Naruto said. "Those new eyes of yours are called the Mangekyo Sakugan, which is the secret to wielding and controlling the power of your sword's Bankai form, because did you really think that the level of your normal Sakugan was capable of controlling the incredible power that is gained when activating Bankai?" The fox replied with a growing smirk. "What kept you from telling me sooner? Because you needed to unlock this power, you have to look at your emotions and be able to truly understand them, along with having complete peace of mind while understanding them. So if I told how to do it, it would have defeated the purpose of you needing to look inside yourself for the answers," said Kyuubi with an angry face. "So now that you have figured out what you needed, I am going to send you back, but before I do you should know that those new eyes of yours have two very interesting abilities," said Kyuubi as he told Naruto what they're for. "Now it's time for you to leave and finish off that piece of trash that calls himself the Mizukage." Naruto simply nodded as he began to fade away from his mindscape, but not before saying, "Thank you, Kyuubi." Kushina emerged from behind one of the cherry trees that were regaining their previous, healthy glow as the sun rose again. "The look in his eyes has changed, Kyuubi-sama," she said. "Yes, you are right, Kushina, for I noticed that too. His eyes no longer hold that piercing, commanding, and cold gaze that they used to, but instead they now hold a piercing, commanding, warm, and understanding gaze. Just like the Minato Namikaze, his father, he now has the same look in his yes as the fourth Hokage. You will grow up into an honorable man and good demon king one day, my son," Kushina thought, simply nodding. "Kyuubi-sama, given that Naruto has clearly learned to comprehend his feelings, why didn't you tell him your name?" Kushina asked inquisitively. "I know he could probably hear my name right now, but I won't tell him until he needs my power, because he doesn't need it yet. However, I'm happy that I can now call him by name when he needs my power," the fox remarked before heading off to find a place to nap. Kushina said, "I understand, Kyuubi-sama," and she began to leave. He began to use hand seals for a jutsu to get rid of Mizore. "I must thank you for your help, girl, because if it wasn't for you I just might not have been able to defeat him," he said. As she held Naruto in her lap, Mizore was too distraught to notice what was happening and simply sat in silence, sobbing, oblivious to the dark pink, almost crimson aura that was beginning to envelop Naruto and heal his wound. "Now die. Lightning style, lightning strike." Jin said as he finished his hand signals. Then, he pointed his pointer finger at Mizore, and a bolt of yellow lightning erupted from it. Racing in Mizore's direction, Naruto's eyes then opened, revealing his new Mangekyo Sakugan. Naruto calmly said, "Reflect," as he opened his right eye wide to examine the impending attack. A glass-like barrier materialized in front of him and Mizore, only visible due to the glare it produced from the sun. Not even a second after the lightning bolt struck the barrier, it resurfaced at Jin with twice the force, size, and speed. Jin was so stunned by what had happened that he was unable to move quickly enough to avoid being hit. He immediately used the water wall jutsu to defend himself, but due to the lightning jutsu's enhanced power and the fact that Jin was running low on chakra, he was unable to make the water wall strong enough to totally stop the attack. As a result, he was struck in the chest and sent flying through several trees. In an attempt to attract the girl's attention, Naruto said, "Mizore-chan, I need you to let go so I can finish this." Mizore said, "Naruto-kun, are you okay?" as she released Naruto and watched him slowly get to his feet so he could face her directly because she was still seated. "Don't worry, Mizore-chan, I'm fine," Naruto said, giving her a tight hug in return. She was surprised when Naruto whispered in her ear, "I promise you that I will never leave you or Mocha-chan," before he slowly withdrew and planted a gentle kiss on her. Mizore noticed that, in addition to his eyes appearing different, they also had an odd warmth to them as he gazed at her, but she wasn't one to question a good thing, so she simply returned the kiss. Naruto said, "Get behind me, Mizore-chan, because I'm going to finish this," and they withdrew. He then began to move in Jin's direction, until he was roughly 60 feet away from Jin and 20 feet ahead of Mizore. When Jin finally regained his composure, he saw Naruto, who was supposed to be dead, approaching him. This made him frown and slowly get to his feet because he was still a little unsteady from the last attack he had taken. "Why can't you just die, Naruto Kuchiki?" Bakudo 61, Rikujukuru, 6 bars of light, Naruto said, pointing to Jin with his middle and pointer fingers after giving him his customary calm expression and icy gaze. As Jin frantically tried to break free, 6 bars of light appeared around him and effectively restrained him. After saying, "You should feel honored, Jin Ichimaru, for you shall now witness a power that has not been seen for half a century," Naruto slowly pulled Senbon Sakura and held him straight down with his arm extended. At that moment, he released the sword, and as it struck the ground, it sank in, and as he said, "Bankai," rows of swords began to appear behind him. "Scatter Senbon Sakura Kageyoshi," Jin said, and his eyes grew wide as he watched the swords break into so many pink fragments that it was hard to count how many there were. Naruto simply indicated Jin with a gesture, saying, "Now turn to dust and disappear." Jin simply smirked and closed his eyes as the wave of pink, shard-like cherry blossoms rushed towards him at breakneck speed before he was swallowed whole and torn to pieces. All he could think was, "So this is how it ends, dying at the hands of a kid." There was nothing left of Jin, not even a bloody corpse, after the shards had eaten him and vanished. Mizore was simply astounded by Naruto's true strength and stood there in disbelief as she witnessed this stunning yet extremely lethal attack. Naruto sheathed his sword, stopped the flow of his SP, and allowed his eyes to return to their typical piercing blue color. "So I can now truly use Bankai," he said. At that moment, he saw Mizore approaching him, and as she approached, Naruto's vision darkened and he passed out in her arms. "And here I was hoping to keep pulling the strings behind Jin so I could stay in control of this country, but at least I got to see how powerful Naruto Kuchiki is, and I must say I am not disappointed," he said, grinning, as he vanished. "I look forward to fighting you one day. I look forward to fighting a member of the clan that is responsible for the creation of the Byakugan and the Sharingan," he said, before vanishing. The strange figure, clad in a black cloak with red clouds, an orange mask, a black spiral, and black spiky hair, was watching everything that happened while hiding behind a tree. As she approached Mizore from behind, with Kenpachi trailing closely behind because they had just won the battle, Mocha asked, "Is he alright, Mizore?" with a note of concern in her voice. "Yeah, he's fine. He just needs a little rest since he's completely exhausted." When Mocha took the rosary out of her skirt pocket and put it back on the chain around her neck, she instantly transformed back into the younger, pink-haired version of herself. "In that case, I'm no longer needed here then, now that the mission is completed," she said. As she stuck her head out from behind Kenpachi's back, an ecstatic Yachiru exclaimed, "Wow, how'd you change like that?" She laughed and said, "Now we both have pink hair," while Mocha simply grinned broadly at the odd but endearing young girl in front of her. Kenpachi looked at Mizore, who was now holding a sleeping Naruto with his head resting on her shoulder. "The kid actually pulled it off. He really is something, you know, girl," he said. Mizore caressed Naruto's head. "I would expect nothing less of the future king," she said. Kenpachi began to leave, with Yachiru contentedly clinging to his shoulder. Well, anyway, we really should get going to the Mist Village in order to establish new control along with getting a few things cleared up, as well as getting the kid in a bed so he can get some well-earned rest, he said. So we might as well get going to Mizore, Mocha said, glancing at Mizore, who simply nodded before the two began to follow Kenpachi while Mizore held a sleeping Naruto. Two figures sat opposite each other at opposite ends of a table in a pitch-black cave with only one candle for light. Grimmjow-sama, I just received word from Madara that Jin Ichimaru, the one we gave the position of Mizukage to, was killed by your nephew. So, to think that he's actually become that strong, he definitely is incredible, just like his older brother. Speaking of Itachi, should I have him removed? No, I still have use for my other nephew, and seeing as he's not much of threat right now considering he's completed every mission we gave him, it would be a lose for us to get rid of someone so helpful even if he is a spy. But don't worry Pain, because when he outlives his usefulness I will allow you to remove him. Understood. But now that our control on the Mist Village has fallen, what should we do now, sir? We still have a Megakura, and the loss of the Mist Village is just a minor setback in conquering the ninja world. I personally think that Naruto should be dealt with immediately, sir, considering how powerful he is becoming, because as it is he can be considered a large new sense, but in a few years he will definitely become a large threat if we leave him be, Pain said with a stronger voice. Before Pain realized what was happening, he found himself pinned to the cave wall by his throat, staring into the menacing and strong Sakugan eyes of an enraged Grimmjow. With his own Rinnegan, Grimmjow simply narrowed his eyes at Pain's blatant display of disrespect. Grimmjow put more pressure on Pain's throat and asked me dangerously, "Are you questioning me, Pain?" "No sir," Pain stifled. "Good," Grimmjow said, releasing Pain before vanishing and reappearing in his chair across the room as Pain collapsed to the floor, struggling to breathe. "Remember your place, Pain, for neither you or that fool Madara who believes he is in charge of Akatsuki is the real leader, for I am the real leader and the strongest, so next time you want to talk out against me just remember the difference in power between us." Grimmjow with tears in his eyes. "Of course, please forgive Grimmjow-sama." Grimmjow pointed to the door and said, "Good, now get out of here." As he walked away, Pain couldn't help but frown. He thought, "I know that even I am no match for the likes of you, Grimmjow, but even you can't stand up to me and Madara. Soon your time as the true leader of Akatsuki will end and I and Madara will be the ones in charge." And his frown turned into a smirk before he vanished into the cave's darkness. Grimmjow smirked evilly as he watched Pain vanish into the cave's darkness with his now 5-pointed star-shaped Mangekyo Sakugan. "You may think you have the element of surprise on your side, Pain, but unfortunately for you my Mangekyo Sakugan gives me the ability to listen to a person's thoughts, along with one other secret ability," Grimmjow said. A still smirking Grimmjow said, "No matter what you do, I have backup. Even if you come after me with the entire Akatsuki clan, you still won't defeat me, because even though the entire Kuchiki clan was destroyed except for me and my nephews, no one ever said that the side branch of the Kuchiki clan was completely destroyed too. Isn't that right, Karya?" 10 different pairs of eyes appeared in the cave's darkness behind Grimmjow. "Yes, that is right, Grimmjow," a relaxed male voice from the group of red eyes in the cave's rear said. Grimmjow could only say, "Excellent," before the candle that was illuminating the cave room went out. Naruto began to slowly awaken, only to discover that he was in a strange place. As he examined himself, he saw that he was dressed normally and that Senbon Sakura was leaning against the bed to his right, while he lay in a plain white bed in what appeared to be a white hospital-style room. Mizore said, "So you're finally awake, Naruto-kun," as she unexpectedly showed up on Naruto's left side as she usually did. "I can defeat a cage-level ninja and even sense the presence of the legendary Jiraiya of the Sannin, yet I can never sense her even when she appears right behind me," Naruto thought as he inhaled a deep, calming breath. He then slowly shook his head back and forth in frustration before turning his head to the left to face Mizore. As Naruto sat up, he said, "I'm just fine, Mizore-chan," wearing a tiny smile. Mizore sat on the edge of the bed and looked at Naruto, who nodded his head in gratitude. "You've been asleep for about a day and a half. I just thought that you might have wanted to know that," she said. As if in line, Naruto and Mizore both said, "So where's Mocha-chan?" and then watched as Mocha screamed and rushed through the door. As she swayed from side to side and laughed hysterically, a hysterical Mocha screamed, "Ee-ah! Let go of my chest, Yachiru-chan." Her arms were flailing wildly in the air as she attempted to shake off the little pink-haired girl who was holding on to her chest. During this brief incident, Mizore and Naruto were only able to blink a few times in bewilderment before turning to face Mocha and then back to each other. A flushed Mocha yelled, "Will one of you stop starring and just help me?" In response to her pleas for assistance, Mizore kindly put an ice needle in one of the pressure points on the back of Yachiru's neck, knocking her unconscious. Since the needle was made of ice, it would melt away on its own and allow Yachiru to wake up normally later. Yachiru took a deep breath as soon as she was free of Mocha's chest, and then she ran to Naruto, grabbed his arm, and ran back through the door, yelling, "We gotta get out of here before she wakes up." Mizore simply shook her head, then took Naruto's sword and trailed behind. Kenpachi muttered, "They must really want to get back home," as he watched Mocha dash by him, pulling a swirly-eyed Naruto along with her. Mizore looked at Kenpachi, who was now dressed in the Mist Village's cage robes because he was now Mizukage. "Sorry for our sudden leave, Mizukage-sama, but Mocha wishes to leave before Yachiru wakes up again," she said. After seeing Mizore nod in agreement, Kenpachi said, "That little brat sure does know how to drive people crazy. Anyway, before you go, I would like you to just tell Naruto that I said the Mist Village is in his debt for what he's done for us all, so if he ever needs any help or a place to stay, the Mist Village would be happy to help him along with you and the other girl that likes to change personalities," he said, smirking. After he left, Mizore began to run in the direction that Mocha and Naruto were going in the hopes of swiftly catching up to them. 2 days have passed since Naruto, Mocha, and Mizore left the Mist Village, and they are now making their way to Konoha via the dirt road, where they can finally start to make out the gates in the distance. With only a glance from Mizore and a faint nod from Naruto, Mocha remarked, "So it looks like we finally home." Mocha sighed and thought, why do they always have to be so quiet? What the three of them saw standing in the gate's entrance was undoubtedly a startling sight as they approached the village sufficiently to be able to see the gate. A tall man, about 6 feet 2, with long silver hair and 2 silver fox ears on top of his head, wearing a white kimono shirt and white samurai-style pants, think of Yoko Kurama from Yu Yu Hakusho, stood in front of the gate, which was surrounded by 3 red, horse-sized fox demons, each with 2 tails. The fact that at least 10 Anbu were standing behind the fox demons, seemingly daring them to attempt to enter the village, also attracted Naruto's attention. When Naruto saw the strange man who resembled a fox demon, he stopped walking and asked, "What is going on here?" "We are here because certain preparations must take place for your coronation, Naruto-sama," said the man who looked like a fox. "What coronation?" Naruto inquired cautiously. "Your 13th birthday is coming in 6 months' time, and because of that the Fox clan will see you as old enough to finally take your place as leader of the clan, allowing me to finally step down as the temporary clan leader once your 13th birthday comes along. Also, before you ask, the other reason so many of us fox demons are here is because you must be protected at all costs during the coronation, as well as the fox demon clan usually lives in the area the clan leader does, even if it's a human-infested area. And before I forget, my name is Kurama," stated the newly minted Kurama. "That is very interesting information indeed, Kurama. I am glad that you are pleased, my lord." With his men right behind him, an Anbu captain declared, "Naruto, Kuchiki and company, you are all requested to meet with the council immediately, and if you try to resist we will use force." One of the fox demons angrily snarled, "How dare you talk to the future great lord of the Fox clan in such a disrespectful tone, human? You are lucky that I don't rip you apart right here and now," making everyone in the Anbu tense. The last part was too quiet for anyone without a demon's sense of hearing, so naturally the 4 fox demons couldn't help but smirk as they heard their lord's final words. "Calm yourself," Naruto said, looking at the fox demon. "We will go see the council willingly. There is no need for violence, for now," he said. Mizore sighed and turned to face Mocha, who simply nodded while observing the scene with concern. "This is going to be a long day," Mizore said. The group noticed that everyone seemed tense about the arrival of the Demon Fox clan because it was very clear, even to an idiot, that there were fox demons in the village. The foxes were mostly just lying around, sleeping wherever they felt like it, or just walking around and not bothering anyone. Nevertheless, the ninja and civilians couldn't help but wonder how in the world all of these fox demons managed to sneak into a ninja village without anyone noticing until it was too late. People and ninja chose to leave the foxes alone rather than begin an endeavor that could end badly for everyone because they were afraid and fascinated by the sheer number of fox demons. This was the main reason why no one was doing anything to the foxes that did not, however, imply that they would lower their defenses. As soon as the group entered the Hokage building, they were escorted directly to the council. Naruto casually pushed open the double doors to the council chamber when they reached it, showcasing the council in all its splendor. An elderly man wearing white bandages over his left eye said, "Naruto Kuchiki, we would like an answer now to the reason so many demons are infesting our village." An enraged fox demon snarled, "Watch your tongue, human, because it is you who are the infestation and not us." Calmly, Naruto said, I have no idea what you are talking about, Danzo. What he is trying to say is, why are there demons in our village, Naruto? Because Hokage-sama and Kurama took the opportunity to give the council an explanation. According to Kaharu, one of the third's former teammates, you can't just let these creatures roam the village freely. He is right, Naruto, because even with that explanation we can't simply let demons roam freely around the village, for the possible casualties could become costly. Then why don't you think of it this way: with the demon foxes in the village, it will cause other ninja nations to think twice about fighting against us, thus adding to the village's military power, and as for the foxes roaming around, they can live in the abandoned Uchiha district. Sakura Haruno, Abichi Haruno's mother, yelled, but Sasuke Uchiha still lives there, and someone like him should not be forced to share his home with these demons, in a pink-haired voice. The members of the council, including Danzo, couldn't help but overlook the Haruno, as they considered how strong the village would appear if a demon clan actually lived there. The Hokage stated, we accept your proposal, Naruto Kuchiki, but if so much as one person is killed by these creatures, they will have to go, whether by cooperating or force. Following a few minutes of discussion, Naruto said, that is acceptable, and then he and his group departed. This is going to cause so much paperwork, the elderly Hokage thought, sobbing in private. As the group exited the Hokage building, Mocha exclaimed, that went better than I thought it would. You shouldn't be so trusting, Mocha-chan, for if you paid attention and really looked at the council, you would have noticed the eerie glint in their eyes, as if they were plotting something, especially the one called Danzo. He, along with most of the council, I'm sure, are plotting against us. Looking at the group, Mizor said, which only means we now have not only Akatsuki after us as you told us, but also high officials on the Konoha Council, Naruto-kun. True, and because of that I plan to get rid of the council the day the Sandaime Hokage passes away. Mocha looked shocked and yelled, you're planning a coup, Naruto-kun? Naruto's eyebrows twitched as he said, yes, I am Mocha-chan, and I would appreciate it if you would keep your voice down on certain things, especially when we are right outside the doors of the Hokage Tower. Mocha simply laughed nervously, holding her hand behind her head. As interesting as this is, I would like to know what my instructions are, Naruto-sama, Kurama replied. Well, I want you and the 3 foxes with you to gather all the other members of the Fox clan roaming the village and bring them to the Uchiha district as fast as possible, so no unwanted accidents can occur, and just stay there till further instructions. Kurama and the other 3 foxes bowed and said, as you wish, my lord, before they fled. Mocha questioned, so what now, Naruto-kun? With Mizor and Mocha right behind him, Naruto declared, now we take a much-needed vacation until we are called on for our next mission. But as he left, he couldn't help but smile when he saw an Anbu with a root symbol dash off. Just as planned, Naruto thought. When young Sasuke Uchiha entered the deserted Uchiha district at around 9 o'clock, he couldn't help but raise an eyebrow in wonder at the new, odd, intricate statues of foxes the size of horses that stood guard at the district's entrance. Sasuke continued to walk and discovered a group of unusually large foxes sleeping in the dirt road. He then noticed more foxes in an ally, and he asked himself, wonder why Ka-san bought those statues. Before deciding to start jumping roofs, the preteen angrily exclaimed, okay, just what the hell's going on here? Finally, when he reached the roof of his own house, he made the decision to look out over his district to see if he could spot any more annoying foxes. Sasuke nearly had his eyes pop out of his head at what he saw. The streets, roofs, alleys, homes, and even his backyard were all populated with foxes. Where the fuck did all these foxes come from? When Mikoto Uchiha heard her son using foul language, she went outside and threatened, Sasuke Uchiha, watch your language or I'll tell all your friends about the cute plushie collection of yours. But Ka-san, look at all. No buts, just get in here now, young man, because I have a long lesson in edict for you to learn, Mikoto sternly replied. Sasuke sighed as he leapt from the roof and entered the house, still perplexed by the origin of all the foxes. Around 9 o'clock at night, 3 people sat around a table in the counseling room. An irate Danzo yelled, the child was supposed to be killed by the Mizukage, not win. The child is more dangerous and powerful than we thought, Kaharu said. It seems that trying to get rid of the child now is suicide considering his power and the new arrival of the Fox clan that will only attack if something should happen to him, Homura said. The only reason those foxes were even allowed to stay was because the damage they could have caused if we refused, Danzo growled. Kaharu said, all we can do now is wait and see what happens in the future. Before she and Homura rose and left the room, Danzo growled as a root Anbu materialized and whispered something in his ear as they were leaving. What would you have us do, Danzo-sama? Just keep an eye on him for now, we can't afford attacking him because he's just too strong. especially with those girls always hovering around him. Also, I have no doubt that those foxes in the village will probably keep a close eye on their demon leader, Danzo said with a cursed voice. You should also know that the villagers may seem like they like Naruto, but from our reconnaissance we've noticed that about 25% are indifferent, 40% fear and dislike him, and the rest either like him and or respect him. According to Danzo, this only means that they wouldn't get very mad if Naruto did die, he observed. When Naruto starts his coup, we will be waiting to ambush him, we will be seen as heroes, and I'll be made Hokage in the end. I feel this will all work out for the best. Now dismissed, Danzo grinned. But sir, something of this magnitude should be dealt with immediately. Maybe we should even tell the Hokage so he can send Anbu after Naruto so we can halt this volcano-sized problem before it erupts, the Root Anbu said in a tone that was unusually disrespectful because, although he had never questioned Danzo's plans before, he felt that waiting for something like this could ultimately lead to disasters and that he would eventually realize how right he was. Danzo's eyes were cold as he said, "How dare you question my orders? If you do it again, the punishment will be severe." The Root Anbu bowed low and said, "Please forgive me, sir, I didn't mean to overstep my place." "Good, now get out of here," Danzo said, and the Root Anbu vanished into the darkness a moment later. As he stood up and left the room, Danzo told himself, "I'm actually glad you're planning a coup, you demon, because the moment my group counters your little coup and kills you, I will be seen as a hero and made the Godem Hokage of Konoha." Sasuke, Sakura, and Sai were waiting for their sensei on a bridge at 10 in the morning. Sasuke was furious that Sakura hadn't even asked him out, and Sai hadn't made any foolish remarks about how he appeared to have been mauled by a dog or a fox. When Kakashi finally made his appearance on the bridge's railing, his eye widened as he pointed at Sasuke in a dramatic manner and yelled, "What the fuck happened to you?" Sakura and Sai took a few steps to the side, noticing the scratched, messy-haired, and torn-clothed form of Sasuke's body twitch as he looked at Kakashi with narrowed, icy eyes and said, "You want to know what happened to me? Then I'll tell you. Some crazy foxes decided to use the Uchiha district as their new home last night, and I was able to deal with that until this morning when a couple of them decided it would be fun to use me as a chew toy." As Sasuke finished, Kakashi couldn't help but perspire a little at how deadly and chilling the tone was. Kakashi cautiously moved away from the volcano that could blow up at any moment, which is Sasuke. Well anyway, we have a new mission and the client is someone you all know, so come on and follow me everyone, he said. Then he began to walk, with his students closely following, especially Sai and Sakura, who felt it was safer to be closer to Kakashi. As they entered the village's richer, clan district, Sakura inquired, "Kakashi-sensei, you said we knew who this person was, but we're heading into the clan estate, rich district, so who do we know that lives here?" She did know Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka, and Shino Aburame, among other clan heirs, so why in the world would she ask, "Who do we know here?" like an idiot? I have to ask myself again if she was truly the smartest person in the academy. "Just be patient and you'll see, Sakura," Kakashi said, sighing and shaking his head before grinning. A black, spiky, and blonde-tipped young man, wearing only blue bathing suit shorts, was lying on a beach chair in front of his pool in the backyard, quietly watching Mizore swim around in a two-piece purple bikini in the nice-sized square in-ground pool that was about 5 feet deep on the right half of the pool and about 8 feet deep on the left. Mocha was also lying on the edge of the pool, simply lounging in a one-piece white swimsuit with pink stripes and the rosario hanging nicely around her neck. There was also a hot spring a few yards from the pool, and Naruto's backyard was roughly 2 acres with mostly grass, a few sakura trees, and bushes in the back that were trimmed into fox shapes but still looked like they needed a trim. "Why did you tell that Anbu about your intentions to seize the village, Naruto-kun?" Mocha swiveled her head to the side to gaze at Naruto and asked. "That Anbu was a Root Anbu who works covertly for Danzo," Naruto replied, turning his head to the side and meeting Mocha's gaze. Mocha said, "Who's Danzo Naruto-kun?" "He's the one-eyed and bandaged-up guy from the council, Mocha-chan." Mocha simply nodded her head in agreement and told him to go on without saying anything more. "I know that if Danzo found out what I'm doing, he will most likely have his men keep an eye on me, along with thinking that he's one step ahead of me. But in reality I'm a step ahead of him, because now that the Root Anbu that usually act as his bodyguards from the shadows are watching me, I can just escape their sight easily and assassinate Danzo without worry of any noticeable confrontations, and once he's out of the way I'll assume control over the Root Anbu. With the Root Anbu and the Fox clan on my side, I will be able to successfully take control of the village." "Naruto-kun," Mocha exclaimed in admiration, "you really thought everything out impressively." With an unusually malevolent smile, Naruto said, "Thank you, Mocha-chan. Now enough about our future plans, because I sense the hired help coming, as he considered the hell he was going to put Sasuke and that bitchy Haruno in. He didn't really hate Sasuke, at least not yet, but he still liked the idea of playing pranks on him. As for Sai, he figured he would give him a simple task because he didn't know him and had nothing against him. Naruto also wanted to see how Sakura and Sasuke would react when Sai was given a task that required almost no work. Mizore swam to the side of the pool nearest to Naruto-kun and asked inquisitively, "But Naruto-kun, couldn't you just use shadow clones?" "I could, Mizore-chan, but where would the fun in that be?" Naruto smirked, his trademark Itachi-like expression on his face. When Sakura and the others arrived at a walkway with two stone fox statues on either side of the brick walkway, Sakura exclaimed, "Wow! Whoever lives here is super freaking rich, not to mention he must really like sakura trees and foxes." The front yard had a large number of cherry trees, which, given that it was approximately an acre, made it appear very lovely and colorful. Sakura once more stared blankly with her head cocked to the side, but Kakashi grinned and said, "Okay, everyone raise your hand if you know who lives here." As he received a raised hand from Sasuke and Sai, Kakashi sighed once more as he was starting to believe that although she might be the smartest person when it came to books, she must definitely be a fool when it came to things like common sense. Sai and Sasuke were also thinking the same thing as they gazed blankly at Sakura. With the slowest, most composed voice he could manage, Kakashi said, "Okay Sakura, now I want you to think very hard now. Who do we know that's rich, famous, and has a nickname with Saku in it?" "It's fucking Naruto Kuchiki, the guy we met less than 2 weeks ago," was the last thing Sasuke said after they stood there for 5 minutes, watching Sakura consider the question. Sakura said, "Oh right," with embarrassment. Sai sarcastically said, "Now can we start our mission? I would like to finish before dusk." With his students closely following, Kakashi said, "Might as well," pulling out ICHA Paradise and walking up the path that led to the backyard rather than the one that led to the door. When they walked into the backyard, Kakashi's first thought was, "I wish I were Naruto, but since I'm not, I guess a nice little swim with that pretty purple-haired girl will do." He saw the two attractive girls in bathing suits by the pool area. An angry Sakura thought, "What is he, some kind of preteen pimp? And why is my Sasuke-kun staring at those two sluts, when he should be staring at me? Cha. I should have two hot girls like that in my pool. This loser doesn't deserve it," was all Sasuke could think about at the moment out of jealousy. Naruto remarked, "So you're finally here," upon seeing his hired assistant. Kakashi's voice was drawn out and lazy as he said, "It's nice to see you again too, Naruto." Kakashi asked with full hope, "Also, do you mind if I go for a swim?" "Do as you wish." Since everyone was interested in what Kakashi was doing, they all remained where they were and silently waited for him to return. Kakashi simply smiled before vanishing in a puff of smoke. After a minute or so, Kakashi reappeared in a puff of smoke, this time sporting his mask, his leaf headband that was normally covering his left eye, and a plain navy blue bathing suit. Kakashi yelled, "Cannonball!" as he launched a cannonball that landed just a few feet away from a startled Mizore. As he was splashed by Kakashi's cannonball, Naruto said, "And here I was hopping to stay dry." His eyebrows twitching after a few seconds, he simply sighed and looked at the three genin in front of him. When he saw Sasuke, he couldn't help but smirk and think, the Fox clan must really not like him. Naruto gestured to Sakura and Sasuke before pointing to the two vintage, rusty push lawn mowers on the side of the house. "So, what the two of you will be doing is cutting the grass with those," he said. Sakura exclaimed incredulously, "You expect us to cut about 3 acres of grass with rusty old-fashioned push lawn mowers?" "Yes," Naruto replied in his typically emotionless tone. Curiosity prompted Sasuke to ask, "Then what's Sai going to do?" Naruto smirked and said, "He's going to trim the fox-shaped bushes, then he can leave," because there were only roughly 10 of them, with 6 in the backyard and 4 in the front. Additionally, he knew it would irritate the other 2 because the bushes didn't require much work. "You're making him do practically nothing and making us cut 3 acres of grass with old-fashioned push lawnmowers," said Sakura. "No," when Naruto said, "You two will not only be cutting the grass but also cleaning the gutters and weeding the flower garden." Sakura couldn't help but stare at him inquisitively after hearing that unexpected response, and Sasuke raised an eyebrow. "By the way, there are 2 whetstones on the front stoop to sharpen the pushmower blades, and Sai has 2 hedge clippers that are already sharpened." Sakura and Sasuke followed an unusually smirking Sai to the front stoop, and all they could do was sigh. After sharpening their blades for about 10 minutes, Sasuke and Sakura began the laborious task of mowing the expansive front lawn. Sai had just finished pruning 2 of the fox-shaped bushes, leaving 8 more to go. As Naruto said, "Now my other guest should be arriving in 3, 2, 1. a green blur materialized in front of him. Rock Lee saluted and yelled, "What did you want to see me for my new friend/rival? I wanted you to manage those genin working for me over there for the day, think of it as training your leadership skills in making sure your subordinates do what they are supposed to," Naruto grinned. Lee grinned and gave a thumbs up before sprinting toward his students for the day. "Yosh. Thank you for this opportunity, Naruto-kun. I promise that I will make sure they finish and to push them to their very limits," he exclaimed. "Sakura, you are going to slow speed it up. Sasuke, stop swerving and mow the lawn in straight lines, quicker quicker, no stopping or slowing down," were among the cries Naruto heard from the front yard just a minute after Lee ran towards them. Sai hid behind the bush he was cutting, hoping that the crazy, green-clad, bushy-browed, bowl-cut freak who claimed Naruto sent him to oversee their work progress wouldn't notice him. "Naruto, I'm going to get for this," was all Sasuke could think as he ran up and down the lawn, sweating alongside Sakura and hearing Lee yell at him non-stop. Sakura's inner voice screamed, "Naruto, I hate you, Cha." And the torture continues, Naruto thought, his grin still intact. Kakashi exclaimed, "Hey, Naruto, why don't you and Mocha come in the pool so we can play chicken?" Mocha said hesitantly, but I can't go in the water." "Mocha-chan, I guess I forgot to tell you that I had the water in the pool unpurified with the special herbs you told me about, so you can go in the water, and even though you can't swim we can stay in the shallower side of the pool," said Naruto as he sat down next to Mocha. The fact that Naruto had gone through all that trouble just so she could finally go in a pool and not feel awkward about not being able to do so made Mocha a little teary-eyed. So, she did the first thing that came to mind, which was to tackle Naruto in a vice grip of an embrace. Since they were on the edge of the pool, they both fell in, and Mocha let out a loud cry of surprise. Luckily, they landed in the shallower end of the pool, so Mocha wouldn't have to worry about droning because she only needed to stand up. However, Naruto had to swim a little to avoid drone himself because he was as tall as the pool's depth. For the first time in her life, Mocha was able to move around in a pool without fear of injury, and as she got up and started to walk around, she couldn't help but smile. "So shall we play then?" Kakashi asked, and before anyone could respond, Naruto found himself sitting on top of Mizore's shoulders after she swam beneath him and landed on her shoulders, startling him a little. Sweating from Mizore's antics, Kakashi said, "I'll take that as a yes. So I guess it's you and I versus them," he said, smiling at a bashful Mocha. As they battled to get the other off their partner's shoulders, Mocha played dirty by yelling at Naruto, "Naruto-kun, you grabbed my breasts." Naruto blushed and stammered, No, I didn't, Mocha-chan," but in his shocked and humiliated state, he pushed him off Mizore's shoulders. However, Mizore shocked him so much that he made Mocha fall off his shoulders as well, resulting in a draw. Naruto could only smile subtly as he watched everyone else laugh at what had just transpired. As he observed the three individuals in front of him laughing and having a good time, Naruto thought softly, "Is this how it feels to have friends and to have fun with them because it feels good?" Everyone in the pool was dressed normally, and Naruto was standing in front of Sakura and Sasuke, who appeared to have just fought their way through hell and then gone back and did it again. Sai had finished his work 4 hours and 30 minutes ago, so it was obvious that he had already gone home, and Lee had left immediately after his 2 students for the day finished because he had a training session with Guy-sensei. Kakashi had also left an hour ago, stating that he had a meeting with the Hokage. Naruto said impassively, "So now that you're all finished, I suppose you may go." Sakura would normally start screaming about how unfair what they did was, but she was simply too exhausted to do anything more than nod silently and head home, where she planned to sleep for a long time. Sasuke was equally exhausted, but he had to put on the "I'm the big bad Uchiha" act because he was so angry. He said, "Fight me, you bastard," while glaring at Naruto. "Maybe some other time, Sasuke," Naruto remarked, jabbing Sasuke in the forehead with 2 fingers. Even though he wouldn't acknowledge it, Naruto had a soft spot for Sasuke because he reminded him so much of his brother Itachi. However, he would soon discover that this soft spot would be getting smaller and smaller due to some decisions Sasuke would make in the near future. "Go home and get some rest, Sasuke. You look like you need it," Naruto said softly. Sasuke couldn't help but whisper, "Ne-san, you really are just like Itachi." Naruto. As Naruto turned around and left him standing there looking dumbfounded, he then turned around and began to walk home, looking shocked by what Naruto had just done to him. "Can you hear me, my son?" Kushina inquired. Naruto returned to his backyard and saw that Mocha and Mizore were simply lounging in the grass. "Yes, I can, Ka-san," he said. "Good, because I am going to start teaching you the second form of your Bankai. This form abandons all defense and devotes everything to killing the enemy. It is called Senkei, Annihilation, Senbon Sakura Kagayoshi. Naruto then began training to become a master of Senkei, Senbon Sakura Kagayoshi, a technique that would focus all of its energy on killing the enemy. Naruto has only been in his new training for 2 weeks, but it will take him at least another month or two to get the hang of it, and then another month of training to become an expert. At the moment, Naruto and Hyuga Hiyashi were meeting privately at the Hyuga estate. Naruto, the favor I am about to ask from you is a very large one, and if there was any other way to do what I need to do I would not be putting you on the spot like this, Hiyashi said with a scowl. What are you in need of? In his emotionless Itachi-like voice, Naruto inquired. The Hyuga Council have decided to make Hanabi my successor and put Hinata into the branch family with the cursed seal on her, and the only way for her to escape that fate would be to be adopted by another noble family with my consent, have all ties and contact with the Hyuga family broken, Hiyashi said with an expression of sorrow. So you want me to take her? Yes. Please Naruto-sama, I beg you, save my daughter from this fate that has been unfairly given to her. There is no other family in Konoha with a noble lineage besides you that the council would accept. Even if they don't, you are also the only one with enough power to use force and win if necessary. Hiyashi pleaded uncharacteristically as he bows too. Naruto was on the edge of tears as he watched the great Lord Hiyashi Hyuga bow, plead, and essentially lose it. He knew that Hiyashi loved his daughter Hinata so much that the only way he could save her from this fate was to let her go. Please don't bow to me, Hiyashi, because of the circumstances. Naruto's expression was unusually soft. I will take your daughter as my adopted sister and protect her. I promise you that one day I will become Hokage, use my power to override your council, and let you see your daughter again. However, if you are going to let her go as you say, you must do it to her harshly because it will be easier for her to let go if she thinks that you think she is a failure, he said. I know, Hiyashi muttered. Then we should do this now instead of waiting, because the sooner we do this the better, Naruto said in a gentle and sympathetic tone. He summoned a servant and instructed him to fetch Hinata, but Hiyashi could only nod. The branch member opened Hinata's bedroom door and entered, saying, "Excuse me, Hinata-sama, but Hiyashi-sama has requested an audience with you." After delivering the message, he left. Wearing her typical silk lavender pajama pants and button-up shirt, Hinata slowly got out of bed. She thought, I wonder what Toussaint wants to see me. It's already 11 o'clock. Didn't do anything wrong lately or fail any of my missions, as she left her room and made her way down the hallway to her father's study. Hinata took a deep, soothing breath as she reached her father's door, opened it slowly, and cautiously poked her head inside, saying, Toussaint UW, wanted to see me. Hiyashi glared at his daughter and said, Yes Hinata, come in, I have something important to talk to you about. Hinata asked, What is it Toussaint? As she entered the room and at last saw the last known surviving member of the Kuchiki clan and the prodigy of the ninja world, Naruto Kuchiki himself was standing to her father's left, and she couldn't help but feel her face heat up a little because, despite knowing that this wasn't the Naruto she had known in the past, he was still the boy she had a crush on. She then heard her father say something unexpected that she never would have expected to hear, even from him. Hinata, Hyuga heiress to the Hyuga clan, you are hereby banished from the Hyuga clan and stripped of your title, Hiyashi said sternly. Hinata's expression changed to one of panic and distress upon hearing the news. She raised both hands to cover her mouth as tears began to fall down her cheeks and then yelled back in a hysterical way, But Toussaint, why? When Hiyashi said, Because you are a disgrace to the clan and to me, you would have been given the cursed seal and thrown into servitude with the branch family as your younger sister Hanabi takes your place. But I could not bear the disgrace that it would have brought upon me, so I did the only least disgraceful thing I could think of, which was finding another noble family to take you in. But seeing as how much of a failure you were, no other family wanted you. Hinata broke down in tears at what her own father was saying to her. But lucky for you Hinata, I was able to find that Naruto Kuchiki, the last of the noble house of Kuchiki from the destroyed wave country, had enough compassion or pity to take you in as his sister. After saying, Now I expect you to be out of the estate within the next 20 minutes, along with never showing your face to this estate or me ever again. Now goodbye Hinata Kuchiki. Hiyashi left the room without saying anything, but as he began to walk down the hallway, he couldn't help but cry a little. He whispered, I am sorry, Hinata, but I could not bear to watch my beloved daughter, who reminds me so much of Hitomi, to be branded with the cursed seal and thrown into the servitude that is the branch family. Now that you are free of the Hyuga clan and with the Kuchiki, you will still be considered to be nobility and an heiress, just with a different clan. I wish you the best of you as I watch you from the sidelines. Naruto couldn't help but frown when he saw the former Hyuga heiress sobbing silently on the floor in front of him. He wasn't used to dealing with such situations, and he simply didn't know how to help the girl relax because, as he's never been in one, he wasn't used to them either. Hinata, you may have lost the family that you've known all your life, but if you think back, I'm sure you will realize just how little your family thought of you in the time you've lived here. But now that chapter of your life is over, because as of now you are my sister and a proud member of the Kuchiki clan, Naruto said, sighing as he watched the girl in front of him with pity as she continued to sigh during this time. He whispered in her ear. Hinata couldn't resist putting her arms around Naruto's midsection and pressing her head against his chest as she sobbed in silence as she felt him kneel down and embrace her. Then Hinata became a little more at ease after hearing Naruto whisper something to her. When Hinata eventually became sufficiently composed, she gradually moved away from Naruto before using her sleeves to wipe the tears from her eyes. Hinata paused a little before saying, thank you, Nisama, as though she was growing accustomed to referring to the boy she had a crush on for the majority of her life as brother. After giving her a raised eyebrow, Naruto returned to his expressionless demeanor and thought, Nisama, I like the sound of that. With no emotion, Naruto stood back up and lifted the still slightly agitated Hinata up with him. She clung to his white robe as though it were a lifeboat. Hinata, we need to leave the compound quickly, he said. A pair of slightly larger than average red foxes were sitting outside the door, each holding a moderately sized duffel bag with their mouths appearing fairly full, as they both left the room with Hinata holding Naruto's arm tightly to her chest for comfort. Are they why your summons? Naruto said, you could say that, and it seems they have already gathered your things, which means we can leave now, as he started to walk to the compound's door, Hinata trailing closely behind him as the two foxes followed her. Given how late it was, they didn't see anyone on their way to the door. When they eventually arrived and stepped outside into the full moon's light, Hinata couldn't help but notice Neji leaning on the side of the compound entrance. Seemingly waiting for her, he started talking as she and Naruto passed him, causing them to pause and listen to what he had to say. Neji remarked, it seems the main branch has finally done something right with getting rid of you, Hinata. But for you to be lucky enough to be saved by the heir of the Kuchiki clan himself is very fortunate for you. And also very interesting that such a noble house would take such a failure into their family. I guess Kuchiki-sama will have to learn the hard way about how failure can never be anything more than failure. He then walked back to the compound, grinning, leaving Hinata in a position that suggested she was about to have another breakdown after hearing his words. I do not believe you are a failure, Hinata. The only failures I saw today were the family that chose to get rid of you, Naruto said after he sighed and gave her a quick glance. Thank you, Nisama, said Hinata, and without any warning she hugged Naruto again tightly, not because she needed to but more because she wanted to, and also because she was sad that she could never be with the boy she loved now since they were brother and sister, and she couldn't help but think, I may have fallen in love with your clone, but you're still you and I still love you, Naruto-kun. I'm glad that at least I get to be with you and be important to you in some way. I know that you will one day love me like a sister, and that's enough for me, but I will always love you and never anyone else. Even though I'm just a 12-year-old girl and shouldn't be saying things like that, I know it's true. You are my one and only that will forever be out of my reach. With that thought, she couldn't help but start to cry a little in Naruto's chest as she hugged him tighter while he held her close too. Because of what Neji had just said, Naruto believed he was reassuring her, but he would likely never realize how mistaken he was. As depressed as Hinata was, she was also a little relieved that she could at least have this relationship with him, where he would likely begin to love her, not as a lover, but as a sister, and that would be enough for her as long as she knew he loved her, even if it wasn't how she had always imagined it would be in her heart. She also knew that she probably would never have had the courage or means to express her actual feelings to him. When Naruto saw some people running across the rooftops with a big scroll on their back while he was waiting for Hinata to release him, he couldn't help but narrow his eyes and mutter, the scroll of sealing. Naruto swiftly but gently separated Hinata from himself and sent the two foxes to his estate, saying, Hinata, it seems that we have your first ranked mission. What do you mean? Naruto commanded, just follow me and be as quick and quiet as possible, before leaping to the rooftops at a pace he knew Hinata could match. He sat on the grass and leaned on a tree about a quarter of a mile from the populated part of the village in the forest. It took some time to get this, but all the planning and waiting was worth it because now, Orochimaru-sama will reward me with more power than I could have ever imagined, he said. I always did have a bad feeling about you, Mizuki. Lord Hokage, the scroll of sealing has been stolen, a frantic Chunin exclaimed as he hurried into the Hokage's office. What? How? I don't know, sir. Don't give me excuses, just assemble the Anbu and have them sweep the whole village and the outside too all the way up to our borders. Now go. The Chunin exclaimed, yes sir, before heading out to fulfill his orders. If that scroll falls into the wrong hands, then, God help us. The directions to Hueco Mundo were written in that scroll by Kushina herself. She solely told and entrusted me with this information in hopes I would keep extra protection for the scroll. She told me that if anyone ever found the gate and opened it, it would mean that whoever opened it could raise an army of creatures called hollows and then transform them into Arankars using the Kuchiki clan's most sacred treasure, which the directions to where it is located were also written in that scroll, said the Hokage, trembling as he gazed out window and sighed. As he stood up in a fighting stance with the scroll securely strapped to his back, Mizuki yelled, "Who's there? Show yourself." Just as expected, Naruto emerged from behind a tree, Hinata standing hesitantly behind him. A wide-eyed and terrified Mizuki stammered, "I am Itachi Uchiha," as he stepped back and watched Naruto emerge from behind a tree. With emotionless eyes and voice, Naruto declared, "I am not Itachi Uchiha, I am Naruto Kuchiki, his younger brother," and he left Hinata behind as he entered the moonlight. He said, "Why don't you go run along, little boy, because unlike the rest of the idiots in this village, I don't believe all those obviously stretched rumors about you." Mizuki couldn't help but smile cockily as he looked at him. Naruto, who was now standing back to back with Mizuki, asked, "Did you say something?" Mizuki turned his head and saw Naruto standing calmly behind him, facing the opposite direction, before he leapt a few yards away to put some distance between them. How the hell did he get behind me? Mizuki thought fearfully. This time, Naruto stood directly in front of Mizuki and used his crimson, four-pointed pinwheel Mangekyo Sakubin to look him in the eyes. "You are slow," he said. Hinata thought, "Ni-sama, just how powerful are you?" as she observed her new brother play with an experienced Chunin as though he were a new student at the Ninja Academy. "Now, just try not to scream too much or you will alert the Anbu. I've been meaning to try this out some time now," Naruto said calmly, staring into Mizuki's eyes. "Mangekyo Sakugan, Nightmare Realm," he said, opening his left eye greatly. "Where am I?" Mizuki murmured as he surveyed his new surroundings, but the odd thing was that, as far as he could see, there was nothing but darkness. Not even the moon or a star could be seen in the sky. "In this place all of your worst nightmares will come true for the next 71 hours and 50 minutes. But the real interesting thing about this special genjutsu is that if your mind finally breaks before 71 hours and 50 minutes pass, you will stay here for another 10 minutes, making it 72 hours, and any physical damage you receive in that last 10 minutes will occur to your real body, along with the fact that you can really die here during the last 10 minutes of this jutsu. But any damage you receive before that time you will feel, but then it will be healed, so you may experience it all over again. Even if you die you will wake up perfectly fine, just to relieve the constant nightmare all over again, thus the name Nightmare Realm. Now have fun." With that phrase, Naruto left until he was invisible. Behind Mizuki, a pair of enormous crimson and black slitted eyes appeared, accompanied by a huge fanged grin, as he stood there, sweating and waiting for something to happen. "Long time no see, puny leaf ninja," the enormous creature behind him said in a menacing voice. Mizuki turned around, his eyes widening and his face taking on a terrified look as he started to shake uncontrollably. He retreated a few steps before muttering, "Kyuubi." Kyuubi exclaimed, "Bingo!" before roaring and letting go of so much chakra that an unfathomable amount of crimson chakra illuminated the area. The worst 72 hours of Mizuki's life started when he saw the enormous fox rise and chase after him. All he could do was scream as loudly as he could. After hearing Naruto say, "Mangekyo Sakugan, Nightmare Realm," Hinata saw Mizuki fall to the ground with numerous terrible cuts and burns, leaving her wondering what Naruto had done during the incredibly one-sided battle. Naruto said, emotionlessly, as he gazed at Mizuki's severely burned and disfigured body, his dead eyes, and the terrified expression etched on his face, or what was left of it. "So it seems you did break before the 71-hour and 50-minute mark, and because of that you paid the ultimate price." After glancing at Mizuki, he leaned over and picked up the scroll from behind him. He then turned to Hinata. But Hinata's eyes were fixed on a tree, which caused Hinata to look that way as well. "You might as well come out now since I know you there," Naruto said, and as soon as he did, his eyes widened and he spun around as fast as he could, only to be struck in the face by a sword that had been slashed straight down, attempting to cut him in two. Naruto saw that his opponent was at least 6 feet tall, wearing similar clothing to himself, with the exception that his clothes were white. His shirt was more akin to an open-colored vest with a black lining, and he was not wearing a robe. The odd light blue spiky hair, blue eyes, and jawbone on the right side of his face, however, were what truly attracted Naruto's attention, with the exception of the odd blue guard with a silver lining that resembled a 7 on the right side and a backwards 7 on the left. His sword was likewise a typical katana with a blue cloth wrapping on the hilt. Grimmjow grinned and regarded the light pink energy that was encasing Naruto's hand like a glove. "Man kid, you really are something." I mean, I never expected you to actually catch my sword with a spiritual pressure-coated hand, he said. Who are you and what do you want? Naruto asked, reactivating his Mangekyo Sakugan and staring down at Grimmjow as though he hadn't heard him at all. Grimmjow said, don't even waste your time, kid, after all I have a pair of my own, before turning on his Sakugan and then his Mangekyo Sakugan, which is shaped like a 5-pointed star, before turning it back to the standard Sakugan. With a sly smile, Grimmjow said, so as you should know, our Mangekyo Sakugans are worthless against each other since either one of us can counter the other's ability. He then reclaimed his sword with his right hand from Naruto's loose hold and backed away a few steps while leisurely carrying it over his right shoulder. Once more, Naruto narrowed his eyes and asked, who are you and what do you want? Naruto, that hurts, that really hurts, I mean, how can you not know your own, Uncle Grimmjow? Grimmjow, who was still grinning, said. Grimmjow's grin grew as he watched Naruto narrow his eyes in response. Oh, and before I forget, I came for that scroll on your back because it has the directions to A. Well, I don't feel like telling you, he said. Get out of here, Hinata, or you will only become a liability to me along with possibly being crushed by our spiritual pressure alone, Naruto said, maintaining his expressionless expression as he gazed down at Grimmjow. But Ni-sama, when I give you an order, I expect you to follow them, now go, Naruto repeated from behind her. After taking a deep breath, Hinata sprinted to the village, more precisely, the Hokage's tower. Furiously, Hinata thought, I need to tell the Hokage and have him send help. And sprinted as quickly as she could to the Hokage's tower. So what do you say about skipping the foreplay and get right down to business, kid? I was just thinking the same thing. My son, you must be very careful when fighting him because you have never fought an opponent with the same abilities as yourself, and whatever you do, don't let him get his hands on the scroll of sealing, Kushina said with the greatest of seriousness. With an eyebrow raised in his mind, Naruto questioned, so he really is my uncle then, and what's so important about the scroll? Yes, he is, and his name is Grimmjow Jaggerjack Kuchiki. He left me and my mother when I was only 10, and the only thing I can remember about him is that he went towards the darker side of our clan's power and became what mother said is called a Arankar, which is a demon with the powers of the Kuchiki clan, and I'll tell you about the scroll later. Don't you mean a Kuchiki with the powers of a demon, Ka-san? No, Naruto. When he left, my mother told me that he dabbled in forbidden arts that transformed him into a demon before his Kuchiki powers manifested. Making so, he was a demon with our clan's powers, hence he became a creature that our clan would call an Arankar, and my brother is the first to ever become a complete Arankar instead of just transforming into a mindless hollow, which was a demon that would eat people's souls, but they were always destroyed by the clan before they could do any real damage. Even in all of our noble clan's history there have only been 20 cases, and my brother is the first to do a complete transformation. He is extremely powerful, Naruto, so don't hold back even a little. Understood, Ka-san. Kyuubi narrowed his eyes and remarked, you should have told him to run, Kushina. He can't defeat Grimmjow, at least not right now. We both know that Naruto would never retreat, and I know that when my brother wants something he doesn't let it go, and right now he wants to see just how strong Naruto is. Before both of them noticed what was going on outside, Kyuubi could only sigh. Grimmjow began to grow impatient and yelled, come on, Naruto, show me what you can do. As he activated his Mangekyo Sakugan and released his spiritual pressure, Naruto said, okay, then I will show you exactly what I am capable of. His spiritual pressure manifested itself around him as pink flames danced around the entire area, scorching the grass and any trees it touched. Grimmjow's expression changed to one of excitement as he considered how he could finally test his nephew's strength. Incredible, I knew he was strong, but not this strong, he said, but not because he was afraid, but rather because he didn't think Naruto had so much power. Grimmjow said, I guess it's my turn, as he released his own tremendous spiritual pressure, which manifested as blue flames that began to battle for control over Naruto's pink flames. The spiritual pressure Grimmjow was releasing was at least as much as Naruto's own, but Naruto simply stood there and looked down at him as though he was unaware of it. Now let's get started, Naruto said, drawing his sword and extending his arm straight out with the blade pointing downward. I know you are strong, Grimmjow, so like you said before, let's skip the foreplay and get straight to it, he said. Naruto then released his grip on his sword, which sank into the ground as it struck it. As they waited for Naruto on the porch to return from the Hyuga complex, Mizore and Mocha began to worry because it was already getting late. They both saw a portion of the forest in the distance begin to take on a pink glow form, and they felt Naruto's spiritual sky soar to a point where it transcended the level they felt him at even during his battle with the Mizukage. Mocha approached Mizore and yelled, Mizore-chan, do you feel that? Naruto-kun must be in trouble, we have to help him. Mizore calmly stated, there is one thing we must do first, though, while meeting Mocha's gaze. With every second that went by, Mocha's concern for Naruto's safety grew, and she cried out in panic, "What is it?" This, as Hinata hurried into the Hokage's office, she exclaimed, "Hokage-sama, Naruto is in trouble and—" But before she could finish, the Hokage raised his hand in an effort to calm the agitated girl. "Calm down, Hinata. What do you mean Naruto's in trouble? He's certainly capable of handling himself, and what are you doing out of the Hyuga estate at such a time?" asked the Hokage with an upturned brow. The Hokage said, "I can explain later, sir. But right now Naruto's fighting someone that is trying to steal the scroll of sealing," and abruptly became serious before stating, in a tone devoid of humor, "Take me where they are now." "Of course, sir," Hinata said, and the Hokage, who had removed his cage robes to reveal his black battle-ready armor underneath, immediately followed him as he ran to the front door. As soon as they were outside, they both raised their hands to their faces because they were struck by a massive shockwave that was coming from the area of the forest in the distance that had a pink glow, similar to chakra. "This power is unlike anything I've ever felt. I can feel the sheer density of it even all the way here. I doubt Hinata will be able to get to close before succumbing to the pressure. Also, any ninja that are patrolling the area should be headed there too, so I know I'll have adequate backup just in case." The Hokage with a widened gaze before turning to Hinata to say, "Hinata, you will stay here because if you come you'll get in the way." "But I want," after saying, "No buts, this isn't a fight for inexperienced genin," the Hokage fled toward the power surge, leaving Hinata to worry about her new brother. Two seemingly endless rows of swords began to emerge from the ground behind Naruto as his sword sank into it. When Naruto uttered the words, "Scatter Senbon Sakura Kageyoshi," the seemingly endless rows of swords began to disperse. Grimmjow exclaimed in amazement as he observed the unfathomable number of cherry blossom-like blades dancing in the wind around him, sparkling in the night due to the full moon. "Incredible, I never would have thought he would have had such powerful Bankai form," he said. Grimmjow's expression changed from one of amazement to a smile as he told himself, "Let's test just how strong it is." As if anticipating it, the pink shards behind Naruto condensed themselves into a ball against his will. Naruto simply stared at Grimmjow impassively with his arms crossed, just like Gaara does, before saying, "Come if you dare," which Grimmjow complied with as he vanished. The condensed ball of pink shards exploded out towards him with incredible speed as Grimmjow reappeared behind Naruto. Because of the close proximity, he was unable to avoid it, which caused his eyes to widen before he raised his arms in preparation for the impact, which struck him like a truck and sent him through several trees. After flying through the trees, Naruto turned to try and spot Grimmjow. He heard him yell, "Sero!" and his eyes widened when he saw a beam of unfathomably condensed red chakra approaching him with unwavering determination in his eyes. Naruto raised both arms in front of him, palms facing the approaching Sero. The Hokage and almost all of the other ninja in the village who were strong enough to approach this close without giving in to the absurdly elevated pressure, basically, some Junin and the majority of the Anbu, arrived on the scene approximately 60 feet from where the battle between Grimmjow and Naruto was taking place. "Report," the Hokage yelled as he witnessed Naruto's Senbon Sakura blast Grimmjow through several trees. Ibiki, a broad man who stood at 6'1" or 6'2" with a scar across his face, a black leather trench coat, a navy blue shirt, and navy blue ninja pants, said, "Sir, it looks like Naruto has the scroll and just engaged this unknown opponent with each using unknown abilities. Why hasn't anyone helped him yet? Hokage-sama, if I may," Guy said as he came into view. "The reason no one has attempted to help is because not only is the opponent extremely powerful by the looks of things, but they're each using unknown abilities, and I think we will just get in Naruto's way if we attempt to help. Besides that, most of us can't get much closer without feeling the full effects of this strange pressure the two of them are creating, and besides Naruto seems to have some kind of ultimate defense with those cherry blossom-like blades of his," said Kakashi in an unusually solemn tone. Kakashi had his Sharingan uncovered and prepared to dive into the battle the moment Naruto needed assistance because he was one of the few people there who could withstand the pressure. A shout of, "Sero!" interrupted their conversation, and a beam of reed chakra headed directly for Naruto caused everyone to open their eyes wide in shock and concern as they watched him stand there. "Move, Naruto!" exclaimed Guy, Sarutobi, and Kakashi as everyone else watched in disbelief. A yellow ball of crackling electrical energy appeared in the center of each of Naruto's palms as he raised both arms in front of himself, palms facing the approaching Sero. He calmly exclaimed, "Double Hado 63, Reikohu!" And two large blasts of yellow lightning shot towards the Sero, only to be overpowered. However, it did weaken the attack as Naruto desired, so by the time it reached Naruto, it was too weak to penetrate the shield Senbon Sakura that had formed in front of him. Grimmjow yelled, "Gotcha!" as he stepped in front of Naruto and struck him in the face with a right hook. This sent him sailing into a tree a few yards away. But Senbon Sakura cushioned his landing by creating a bed of cherry petals behind him, preventing him from passing through the tree. When Naruto got back up and regained consciousness, he saw that Grimmjow appeared completely unfazed and only had a few cuts on his arms from where Senbon Sakura had struck him. "My skin is as hard as iron, so you're going to have to do a lot better than that if you want to really hurt me," yelled Grimmjow in a mocking manner. A shadow clone of Naruto said, "You mean like this," startling Grimmjow as he turned around, and even more so when the clone exploded, sending him toward Naruto. With his right hand, Naruto gestured to Grimmjow, sending waves of elegant yet lethal pink shards in all directions, making it impossible for him to flee. "Now turn to dust and disappear," he said. Grimmjow said, "Aw shit." As he landed on the ground and saw the attack coming, he began applying spiritual pressure to his sword, and when a light blue flame appeared around it, he spun around with it extended, pushing back the shards with a circle of blue fire. He then slashed his sword over his head, creating another arc of blue fire that pushed back the shards that were coming at him from above. All of this was done in a matter of seconds. Grimmjow put his sword over his shoulder and appeared completely unfazed. "Now that was a close call, kid. I mean, damn, if you had more power behind that attack it would have gone right through my counterattack, but luckily for me you're not strong enough yet to do that," he said. Although Naruto was breathing heavily and experiencing a loss of sensation in his arms and legs, this was not because he was becoming weaker. Rather, he was aware that his body was too small and underdeveloped to sustain his full power for prolonged periods of time, which is why he preferred to end battles quickly. Naruto's greatest weakness until he grew older was that, despite his training to withstand his own power, he still has limitations on how long he can withstand certain amounts. Due to his youth, only Mocha and Mizore were aware of this weakness, which is why they were always concerned about him whenever they saw him use a lot of his power. Naruto grunted and whispered, "Damn it, I can't feel anything anymore, and my muscles and tendons are starting to tear themselves apart because of the strain," before he collapsed to his knees, his Bankai at his side returning to its normal sealed form and all of his spiritual pressure vanishing. After a few seconds, Grimmjow, along with everyone else watching, began to smirk as he realized what had happened to Naruto and stopped the flow of his spiritual pressure, which made everyone in the area feel much better because the extra weight had finally been lifted. Grimmjow and everyone else watching couldn't help but stare at Naruto in shock and wonder at what had happened to him. "So you can't hold your full power for long periods of time because of that small and underdeveloped body of yours, huh? What a pity," Grimmjow, who had been smirking, finally decided to say as he began to approach Naruto. He then narrowed his eyes and vanished, only to reappear in front of Naruto to kick him in the stomach before stopping and jumping a few feet away as a wall of ice spikes appeared in front of Naruto. Grimmjow, like the other onlookers, exclaimed, "What the hell?" With agitation and curiosity at that moment, everyone felt as though they had just been struck by a tidal wave. They saw two young girls emerge from the tree line, one with ice spikes for hands and ice for hair, and the other, which they believed was the source of the monstrous aura, had silver hair, fangs, claws, and crimson-slitted eyes. They all felt a monstrous demonic aura appear out of nowhere, along with the sky turning red, the clouds turning black, and the moon turning crimson. "It's the same chakra from 2 years ago," the Leaf Ninja all thought as they gaped in disbelief. "This fight is over and I suggest you leave," Mocha said icily, glancing at Grimmjow, who was standing a short distance away. Grimmjow said, "As you wish, but first I need something," and then he vanished, only to be stopped by Mocha, who punched him in the face rather than flying backward. He vanished in a puff. Mocha merely squinted and then turned to her left, where she saw Grimmjow standing atop a branch with the sealing scroll fully open. Grimmjow exclaimed with excitement, "This is what I've been looking for," before tearing off the end of the scroll and dropping the remainder to the floor. "With that scroll, you're not going anywhere," said Naruto, who was now receiving assistance from Mizore, who had returned to his usual self. Grimmjow said, "And what can you do?" And if it weren't for the silver-haired girl who was staring at him and waiting for him to make one mistake, he would have burst out laughing. "Die," Naruto said, pointing 2 fingers in Grimmjow's direction while using all of his remaining energy in his final attack. A significant amount given that Naruto wasn't running low on energy. Rather, his body simply couldn't take the strain any longer. With that, a ball of black energy began to form in front of Naruto's fingers. Naruto then said, "Hado 90, Kurohitsugi," and Grimmjow was taken completely by surprise as a black box appeared to surround him and implode. Grimmjow remained standing there when it vanished, but his clothes was now covered in blood due to the deep gashes all over his body. He had a murderous look on his face as he gazed at Naruto, who was now unconscious, before coughing up blood. Grimmjow yelled, "You'll pay for this, Naruto Kuchiki," before vanishing into the night. The Hokage yelled, "What are you all waiting for, an invitation?" after him, as they all pursued the now seriously wounded Grimmjow. Mocha approached Mizore, who was now carrying a sleeping Naruto in her arms in a bridal style, and inquired, "How is he?" "He'll be fine with a few days of rest, good," Mocha said softly before leaning down and kissing Naruto on the cheek and whispering in his ear, "I'm glad you're okay. My love." At that point, she pulled the necklace belt with the Rosario on it out of her pocket and, before putting it on, she turned back into the pink-haired version of herself and carefully removed the sleeping Naruto from Mizore before they all began to make their way back to the estate. Grimmjow growled as he lay in a simple queen-sized bed with white sheets in a simple hospital-like room, wrapped in bandages from his neck to his feet. "Damn it. I can't believe I let my guard down enough for him to catch me in such high-level destructive Kido," he said. "If that Hado Naruto used on me was perfected, it probably would have killed me. I never would have imagined for him to even know how to use Kidos, because even I don't know many, considering I left a little while after Ka-san started to teach them to me. Only Ka-san knew them, considering she was a master of the Kido art, which she passed down to my little sister who is also dead like Ka-san. So, just how do you know about what was supposed to be lost with the death of my sister? Even all the scrolls were destroyed. Just who has been teaching you the art of our clan, my nephew?" said Grimmjow with narrowed eyes as he turned his head to the left to look out the window, which had a few rays of light showing through it from the morning's rising sun. A ninja in a white medical uniform entered the room and said, "Pardon me, Amikage-sama, but I just wanted to know how you're feeling this morning." Grimmjow growled, "Yes, I'm fine, but how much longer until I'll be at a 100%? You'll be able to leave the hospital in another 3 to 4 days, but you probably won't be all better until a week, if I may." "Just who did this to you, sir?" inquired the doctor. Grimmjow narrowed his eyes and said, "It is none of your business. Medic, now get out." The medic said, "Why, yes sir," and hurried out of the room. "And this is what happens to someone when they underestimate a powerful opponent," a calm, collective voice said. A person with red eyes, short, slightly spiked silver hair, a brown overcoat, a red long-sleeved shirt, a black collar, and a yellow tie and black pants. "I don't need your criticism, Jin Kariya," Grimmjow remarked, turning to face Kariya, who was standing to his right. Kariya smirked and said, "Of course, so did you acquire what we needed?" Grimmjow sneered and took a piece of burned paper from under the covers, throwing it to Kariya. "Here's what's left of it," he said. "The directions to the gate of Hueco Mundo are here, but it seems the directions to the treasure have been destroyed. All it says about it is, I hid it inside of." Then it cuts off to Konoha, and then nothing, Kariya said, scowling as he read the paper. "I obviously didn't know that." Grimmjow rolled his eyes. "Do you know what it means, Grimmjow?" Grimmjow said angrily, "It means we're missing half the puzzle." "No, Grimmjow, it means that the treasure is hidden inside of something within Konoha." Grimmjow smirked and said, "Or someone. After all, my sister was always the clever girl." Before he began to walk to the door, Kariya said, "Oh, before I forget, I wish you a speedy recovery." Grimmjow watched the only person he completely trusted, even thought of as being on par with him in strength, walk through the door and vanish around the corner. "Precisely, but since we won't be needing the treasure for another few years, we can just take our time, do some research to see where your sister would most likely have hidden it, and when we do, we just need to wait for the opportune moment to infiltrate the village and take it. I can always count on you, Kariya, to help me out. After all, you've always treated me as a younger brother ever since you first found me," Grimmjow said, simply reclining his head and closing his eyes. Flashback: Grimmjow, who is 12 years old and 5 feet 2, was walking on a dirt road in the middle of a forest. He was wearing the same close-fitting outfit that he wears when he is older. He had just left his mother and sister behind 2 days prior. "Now what am I supposed to do?" Grimmjow sighed. "Well, you could always come with me," Kariya said, emerging from the tree a short distance ahead of him. With his right hand on the sword hilt on the left side of his waist, Grimmjow instantly leapt back and assumed a fighting stance. "Who are you and what do you want?" "My name Jin Kariya, and I'm particularly interested in you, Grimmjow." Grimmjow said, "How do you know my name?" as he leaned back and gazed at Kariya with interest. Kariya extended his hand to Grimmjow and said, "If you come with me, I'll answer all of your questions as well as helping you become stronger." Grimmjow walked over to Kariya, who was grinning triumphantly at having just completed the first phase of his plans to conquer the elemental countries. "I don't really have anywhere else to go, so what the hell, I'll come with you as long as you make me stronger," he said. After putting his arm over Grimmjow's shoulder and saying, "Then let us go, there are others you need to meet," the two vanished into the woods, and neither was seen in the ninja community for roughly 20 years. Final flashback: at the moment, Mizore was kneeling on the side of Naruto's bed and using her right hand to stroke his whiskers in an effort to help him relax. She was successful because he was starting to purr. He lay with his eyes closed, enjoying the sensation of Mizore caressing his whiskers, while Mocha, who had silver hair and crimson eyes, stood over him on the other side of the bed. With a note of worry in her voice, Mocha asked, "Are you feeling any better, Naruto-kun?" "I'm okay, Mocha-chan, and I'm also starting to regain the feeling in my limbs again. But I probably won't have full mobility again for another day, then I'll be back to 100% 2 days after that," Naruto said, opening and closing his hands slowly as he noticed that his grip was much weaker than usual due to his condition. Naruto sighed and turned back to face Mocha, saying, "Your meeting with the council begins soon, so both of you might as well go," squinting his eyes before adding, "But if they try anything, do not hesitate to kill them." Mocha simply nodded before bending down to give him a weak embrace, which he returned as she started to pull away. She stopped abruptly, her eyes widening in surprise at Naruto's passionate kiss, which she definitely didn't expect, but she simply chose to close her eyes and give him an equally passionate kiss in return. After 10 seconds or so, she smirked and pulled away. Mizore was a little jealous and decided she deserved a second kiss when she saw Mocha pull away without warning. She leaned over the bed and pressed her lips to Naruto's, which caused him to gasp in surprise and give her a muffled look like Mocha before. He simply closed his eyes and relished the moment, especially when she stuck her tongue in his mouth and engaged in a tongue-to-tongue wrestling match. As she watched Mizore make out with Naruto for the last 15 seconds, Mocha thought angrily, her eyebrows twitching slightly. Is she trying to suffocate him? Mocha whispered, "That's it," as her jealous side began to take over. Mizore then found herself flying through the hallway and the bedroom door, letting out an unusual girly shriek just before she collided with some furniture. "Mocha-chan, are you jealous?" With a knowing smirk, Naruto asked. Mocha simply rolled her eyes and left the room, slamming the door shut behind her. "I have a bad feeling that someone on the council is going to piss her off some way, and since I'm not there to keep her under control, if she does lose her temper, she'll probably just kill whoever pisses her off. I guess it doesn't really matter though, seeing as they can't do anything to her anyway. She's just too powerful with the rosary off," Naruto said to himself after smirking, closing his eyes, and letting out a sigh. "Your son has such a way with women, Kushina." Kyuubi repressed a chuckle. Kushina sighed. I know, she said. An hour has passed since Mocha and Mizore left, and Hinata was standing outside Naruto's bedroom door, unsure whether or not to enter, despite Kurama having just moments before informed her that Naruto wanted to see her. After giving Hinata a gentle shove to the door, Kurama said, "What are you waiting for? Go on," and Hinata took a deep breath to open the door and enter the room. "You wanted to see me, didn't you?" Hinata asked, hesitantly entering the room and shutting the door behind her. "Absolutely, I do. To start, have you been assigned a room yet?" Gazing at her in front of his bed, Naruto questioned. Hinata said, "No, I haven't even been able to change my clothes since I wasn't told where my things were taken," and then she looked reluctantly at her semi-dirty clothes. Naruto simply nodded, then grunted and sat up on the edge of his bed, reaching for a simple black cane on the bedside to aid in his walking due to his weakness. Naruto narrowed his eyes and began to walk toward Hinata, using the cane to aid in his gait. "How I despise having to use this," he said. "Your room is directly across from this one. Your luggage is also there, and there's a new set of clothes on your bed that I expect you to wear going forward because that's how our clan dresses," Naruto said. "Meet me in the courtyard for training after you change." With a respectful bow, Hinata said, "Hi Ni-sama." Naruto simply nodded and left the room, making his way to the courtyard. Hinata then proceeded to her new room, which she found to be twice as large as her previous one. When Hinata entered the courtyard, she was dressed in black samurai pants with a white sash and a black kimono shirt featuring a blue-eyed white fox sitting on the back. "Can I really use my bloodline, Ka-san, to make her a true member of the Kuchiki clan?" Kushina said, "Yes, you can. Just thrust your sword into her stomach and send your spiritual pressure through the sword and into her body, as though it were insignificant." "But are you certain, Ka-san?" "I'm sure, of course. Just follow your Ka-san's instructions now." Naruto sighed and said, "Very well, Ka-san," before approaching Hinata, whom he had just noticed emerged. "It appears that you omitted the information about how the Hogyoku you surreptitiously implanted in Hinata at birth. She was born 2 months ahead of Naruto in this FIC. Is the only reason this small stunt won't kill her. It will absorb Naruto's energy like a sponge and force it to produce a shockwave that will travel through her body before going back to dormancy." With a raised eyebrow, Kyuubi stated, That shockwave will cause the highly diluted Kuchiki blood that flows through her veins and that of every other Hyuga member to increase to the point where she receives some of the Kuchiki clan powers. As she waved Kyuubi away, Kushina said, "Details, details," which only caused him to sigh. Drawing his sword from over his shoulder, Naruto walked up to Hinata and said, "What I am about to do is probably going to hurt a lot. Are you going to do anything, Ni-sama?" Hinata hesitantly asked as she took a step back, but before she could react, Naruto moved faster than he should have given his current state and stabbed her in the stomach. His eyes widened slightly as he watched Hinata glow bright white. Feeling all of his spiritual pressure be absorbed into her, he then pulled out his sword as the surge of power pushed him back a few feet and covered his eyes due to the bright flash of light. Hinata's eyes widened as Naruto slashed his sword through her, fearing that he would kill her. Then, suddenly, like a tidal wave, she felt an overwhelming surge of power, followed by a bright flash of white light. As Naruto watched the light go out, he couldn't help but snicker at the new Hinata's appearance. Her hair was black instead of navy blue, her eyes were stronger and more confident, and she was carrying a katana around her waist. "Ni-sama, how did you harm me?" Hinata asked, her voice sounding more assured and free of stutters. Naruto, who was panting heavily, said, "Congratulations Hinata, you are now a real Kuchiki," before he collapsed to one knee due to the amount of power he had given Hinata. "It's a good thing I put a Cumin barrier, high-level Kido barrier, around the estate the day I moved in, or someone might have felt that power surge," he thought. "What happened, Ka-san? I thought you were saying that this would only require a small amount of my energy, but she used almost all of it," Naruto thought as his breathing began to return to normal. As Kyuubi's perspiration fell and Naruto's eye twitched, Kushina nervously said, "Sorry, Naruto, I guess I miscalculated. But anyway, concerning your condition, you probably won't be back to 100% for another week because that's how long your spiritual pressure should be back to normal." Naruto sarcastically said, "Perfect," as he rose again and leaned on the cane even more than before. "Ni-sama, are you okay?" Hinata yelled anxiously as she rushed to him. Hinata gave Naruto a startled look when he said, "I'm fine, Hinata, and as far as what happened to you, well, I activated the dormant Kuchiki blood coursing through your veins." "However?" Hinata asked, her face still astonished. "How doesn't matter? What matters is that you now possess the power, and I'm going to start teaching you Kido. First, until further notice, you are also not permitted to leave the estate." "But what about my team and my missions?" Hinata objected. It seems that this transformation gave her more of a backbone along with more confidence, seeing as how she isn't stuttering anymore. "She probably doesn't even realize it," said Naruto with a smirk. "Don't worry, Hinata, I've already messaged someone to let your sensei know what's going on." They both sat down on the ground as Naruto explained what Kidos are and how to use them. "Now, take a seat because I'm going to go over the fundamentals of Kidos before I teach you the practical use," he said. "What do we owe for the inconvenience of having to speak with you all?" With Mizure at her right, Mocha said as she made her way into the council chambers. "How disrespectful of you to address the council in such a manner," Homura shouted out. Mocha narrowed her eyes and remarked, "I only show my respect to those I think deserve it." Homura, wearing a red face of rage, said, "Why you little," but Danzo cut him off, saying, "We called you here today because we would like to know what those powers used yesterday night are and if they are bloodlines. It appears that the Hokage lied to us when he said the council knew we were demons because if they did they wouldn't have to ask this question, so the only logical reason," he said. Flashback First S-Class Mission, Chapter 8. "Well, just as we don't really know what you, Naruto, are capable of, we don't really know what they are capable of. However, we can tell that their chakra signatures aren't quite human, which makes us think they are demons. However, we don't really care about that because, from our perspective, we know you are on our side," the Hokage said. Final flashback Mocha and Mizure both gave Sarutobi piercing glares that caused him to duck behind his Hokage hat because he had a pretty good idea of why they were staring at him that way. It seems that the only reason he said that was in order to see if we would deny the accusation, and since we didn't deny the accusation he was able to prove his own personal curiosity and assumptions about us being demons. "Very clever, you old monkey," they thought. "Neither of us have any interests in explaining our powers to you, so if that's all you wanted we will be leaving," said Mizure. "Hold on one second, it's obvious that you both have some kind of bloodline given what happened yesterday night. If I had to say I would say you with the silver hair are the stronger one, so I along with Kaharu, Homura, Haruno, and the civilian part of the council have decided for you to marry Sasuke Uchiha in order to increase the power of the Uchiha bloodline," said Danzo with a smirk. "Why are you grinning? You human, do you really think I'll listen to you?" As she said, I am one of the few, if not the last, members of the noble demon vampire clan. I do not take orders from anyone, and those who dare order me around, die. She then vanished and reappeared in front of Danzo. And her next move even startled Mizukage so much that she lost her lollipop. They all stared at Mocha, who now had half of her arm through Danzo's heart, with wide eyes and open mouths. Ignoring everyone, Mocha bent down and whispered, "Know your place," in Danzo's ear. Then, she tore her arm from his chest and watched the last remnants of life vanish from the old Warhawk's eyes before vanishing and resurfacing in her original location. Despite his kindness and forgiveness, the Hokage found what had just transpired to be wholly inappropriate and unforgivable. Sarutobi screamed, his fists clenched and his face displaying anger. "Akashiya Mocha, you will be sent to prison for your unjustified actions of killing a member of this council in broad daylight. Anbu, stop her now." At least a dozen Anbu appeared in the room, ready to restrain her and take her to jail, but they abruptly stopped when Mocha and Mizukage were confronted by half a dozen regular one-tailed snarling fox demons. At the council's situation, Mocha simply grinned and said, "I doubt that you have the manpower necessary to take me into custody, and even if you could, you would have them to deal with." Points to the fox demons, along with the rest of them and Naruto himself too. The Hokage merely snarled before slamming both fists into the desk and shouting, "From now on, the band from this building will be hearing you. Now leave this place." Mocha said, "With pleasure," and then she and Mizukage departed with the foxes. "You can't simply let her go, sir," Choza Akamichi objected. "I must agree," Shibi Aburame, who never showed emotion, said. The Hokage merely sighed before declaring, "Aware with such an adversary in our own backyard is something that we can't risk. She herself is obviously above a cage level given the power we felt from her yesterday. Not to mention if we could somehow take her in, I have no doubt Naruto would get her back by force. Thus, I'm forced to let her go." As they grimly watched the Anbu remove Danzo's lifeless body, everyone at the council table couldn't help but nod in understanding. "Mocha, was that truly necessary?" As they both ate some sweet dumplings for lunch at Ichiraku, Mizukage asked. As she bit into her dumplings, Mocha said, "Yes, it was, because not only did I get rid of a probable future threat, but now that Danzo's out of the way, Naruto can take over the Root Anbu organization like he planned." Mizukage said, "So that's why you did it," mainly to herself. As she accepted a letter from one of Naruto's messenger foxes, Mizore remarked, "What's this? What does it say?" Mocha inquired. "It says we have to tell Hinata's sensei that Hinata will not be attending missions or training sessions for the next few months." "Why didn't the fox deliver this letter directly to Hinata's sensei?" Mocha inquired. "The fox probably didn't know who she is, and we do," Mocha said, raising an eyebrow. As an answer, Mizukage simply took out a picture of a red-eyed, raven-haired woman stapled to a letter and showed it to Mocha, who then turned it over to reveal that the back of it contained directions to the woman's location. Mocha sighed and said, "So we get stuck being messengers," before she and Mizukage finished their dumplings and stood up to search for Kurenai. Hinata was an hour late, which had never happened before, and Shino, Kiba, and Kurenai were waiting for her in their training field. "Kurenai's sensei, where's Hinata? I mean, shouldn't she have been here already?" said Kiba. Kurenai remarked, "I'm wondering the same thing, Kiba," as she observed Shino gaze at a praying mantis on a tree with a modicum of interest. "Pardon me, but are you the sensei of Hinata?" Mocha walked up to the training field and asked. "Who is interested in knowing?" Kurenai raised an eyebrow and said, "Those are the two girls that helped scare off that strange ninja who tried to steal the scroll of sealing last night, and that silver-haired girl is someone I don't think I'll ever forget after feeling that incredibly oppressive demonic aura that resembled Kyuubi's aura." Her eyes widened as she took a subconscious step back and gave Mocha and Mizukage a closer look. Mocha smirked and flashed her big canines. "By that look on your face, you must remember who we are. Don't worry though, we don't bite." "Well, at least Mizukage doesn't," she said. "Who are these people, sensei?" Kiba exclaimed. "They're friends of Naruto Kuchiki," Kurenai said. "Anyway, we're here to tell you that Hinata was adopted into the Kuchiki clan as Naruto-kun's sister and is undergoing special training that will keep her in the estate for the next couple of months," Mizukage said as if it were no big deal. "What?" Kiba yelled, and Mocha gave him a chop to the back of the neck for it. Mocha said, "He was being too noisy." Noticing that everyone was staring at her, Shino simply moved closer to Kurenai, hoping for additional protection from this possibly insane woman with silver hair. Looking at Mizukage, Kurenai said, "I don't understand. I mean, how could all of this happen, and more importantly, why?" As she struggled to accept that her student had just been knocked out. "We're only the messengers, we don't know why," Mizukage said in response. Before Kurenai could ask any more questions, Mocha and Mizukage vanished in a flurry of snow and black flames, respectively. That's right, and now that the message was delivered we will take our leave, Mocha said. With a note of agitation in his voice, Shino stated, I suppose all we're going to be doing is D-ranked missions until Hinata returns. Kurenai frowned and said, well, we might as well wake up Kiba and start the missions for the day, before turning to face Shino. Since I don't even know where Naruto lives, I can't even go talk to him or Hinata for a better explanation of what's going on, Kurenai said. The next sound heard in the vicinity was Kiba yelling, I'm already awake and I'm UUUUP. Now, SHINOOOO. Get these DMN bugs off me. After teaching Hinata how to execute Hato 33, Sukatsui, Blue Fire crashed down. For the first few hours, Naruto helped her with her Juken style. That's enough for today, Hinata, he said as the sun started to set. How do you know the Juken style, Ni-sama? Only to be so proficient at it. Between breaths, Hinata asked. Naruto managed to keep up with Hinata in their Juken spar despite his weakness, but it was barely enough to keep him breathing heavily. He tried to catch his breath before he said, someone I know gave me a few Juken scrolls and that's all you need to know, so why don't you get ready for bed, Hinata? Mizore and Mocha emerged from the rear trees as Hinata was leaving. How was your encounter with the attorney? It went rather well, I even got rid of Danzo for you, Naruto-kun. I had a feeling you were going to kill someone, but at least it was someone I needed dead anyway, so good work, Mocha-chan. We also delivered the message to Hinata's sensei. Naruto said, thank you, Mizukage-chan. If it's okay with you too, I'd like to go to bed early tonight. He then started to head for the door. Mocha simply walked over and picked Naruto up as she usually does and said, this is what happens when you push your body while it's already in a bad condition. Mizukage and Mocha just scowled as they watched Naruto struggle a little to get to the house's door. Naruto merely nodded and muttered, I know, before abruptly falling deep asleep. Mocha and Mizukage simply sighed at his carelessness. Mizukage said, we should probably get him into bed, and Mocha nodded. Mizukage then followed Mocha inside the house. About 3 months have passed since Naruto started teaching Hinata, who has significantly improved in Kenjutsu, Juken, and Kido under his tutelage, but she hasn't yet heard her Zanbakuto name. Naruto also regained his full strength and was able to locate the Root Anbu base by persuading a Root Anbu member he had purchased 2 months prior. The base was in a state of chaos, and nobody knew what to do, so when Naruto arrived, they essentially welcomed him as their new leader. Within a month, Naruto had everything operating smoothly once more for the covert organization. For the first time in roughly 3 months, Hinata was walking to the location of her squad's meeting because Naruto had finally determined that she possessed sufficient abilities. Kurenai saw a girl with raven hair and a similar outfit to Naruto approaching her and said, hello, could I help you, miss? Kurenai gave Hinata a startled and silent look when she said, it's me, Hinata, Kurenai-sensei, as she walked up. Oh, is that you, Hinata? The new clothes makes you look fantastic, but why did you dye your hair? Kiba inquired. At that point, Hinata made the decision to tell them everything that had happened to her over the previous few months, and when she was done, they were all genuinely shocked and curious to hear her story. So, you and Naruto-san share the same bloodline now? Shino inquired. Hi, Kurenai smiled kindly and said, well, I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say we're all glad that you're finally back, Hinata. Certainly, as he placed an arm over Hinata's shoulder and heard Akamaru bark, Kiba exclaimed with excitement. Shino said, it's good to have the group back together, and nodded. Kurenai suggested, how about we celebrate this milestone with our squad's first C-class mission? Kiba yelled, all right. Let's start walking to the Hokage's tower for our first C-class mission, as they all started to do so. When they got to the tower, Kiba couldn't help but laugh when he saw what looked like a mauled Sasuke Uchiha giving a cat to a fat woman. The Hokage raised an eyebrow and said, so do you really think your squad's ready for a C-ranked mission, Kurenai? Yes, I do, sir, especially after being told about Hinata's training over the last few months. The Hokage exclaimed, very well then, bring in the bridge builder. A moment later, a man in his 50s entered the room, dressed in jeans and a white t-shirt, sipping a bottle of sake, sporting gray hair and a beard. Tazuna angrily yelled, I'm paying you Leaf Ninja good money, and all I get is a group of kids. That one with the dog looks like a loose cannon, she looks like she's from some rich clan, and he just looks antisocial and creepy. In response to Shino's blank stare, Kiba's snarl as Kurenai held him back so he didn't maul the client, and Hinata's passive staring at him like her brother, this caused the Hokage and Kurenai to sigh, thinking, 3 months with Naruto and she's already acting like him, perfect. Another Naruto, just what the village needed. From behind Tizuna, a cool, collected voice said, "My sister is more than adequate to protect you herself. The rest accompanying you can be considered merely her backup." Hinata exclaimed, "Ni-sama, what are you doing here?" Naruto said, "I'm here to pick something up," as he emerged from behind Tizuna. "Who the hell are you?" Tizuna impolitely asked. Naruto turned away from Tizuna and turned to face the Hokage. "No one you should concern yourself with. Now Hokage-sama, the deed please," he said. "Yes, it is your inheritance from your father after all," the Hokage said, tossing Naruto a scroll, which he caught with one hand. Naruto looked at Hinata and said, "I expect good news from you on this mission when you return," before vanishing with a flash step. Kurenai said, "Well, now that that's done, how about we start the mission? Now everyone meet at the East Gate in 30 minutes, before she and Hinata vanished in a whirlpool of leaves, leaving Shino and a resentful Kiba by themselves. "How come they know how to disappear and we don't?" "Because Kiba they were taught and we weren't," Shino stated, raising his glasses. The only issue was that Kurenai herself wasn't present, even though Hinata, Kiba, Shino, and the inebriated Tizuna were all waiting by the East Gate as instructed by Kurenai. "Hey kid!" exclaimed the gate patrolman. "Yes," Shino replied. The guard threw a letter to Shino, who opened it and read it quietly. "Your sensei told me to give this to you," he said. "What's it say?" Hinata inquired. "It says that sensei won't be accompanying with us because she was given a last-minute ranked mission that required her skills. Also I am the captain of this mission now it seems." Kiba exclaimed, "Woohoo, our first C-class mission and we get to do it by ourselves as Akamaru." As Akamaru gave him a yip. As all of this was happening, Hinata couldn't help but look at Tizuna, who appeared to be nervous, and narrow her eyes suspiciously. "What do you know that we don't?" Kiba yelled. "Hey Hinata, old man, let's go," as they all left. The four fox generals were Naruto, Moka, Mizure, Kurama, and Kuyu. They had four tails, long blonde hair, black pants, a black shirt, amber-slitted eyes, and a thin black overcoat with white lining. Kuyu was approximately 5 feet 10. They were all in a hidden place about 1.5 miles into the Konoha forest. Naruto remarked, "So this is the Namikaze estate," as he observed a stunning estate that appeared to span 4 acres, with 3 two-story homes on the left and right and a large 3-story house in the center, all of which were roughly 400 feet apart. Mizure and a pink-haired Moka in awe asked, "This was your father's estate, Naruto-kun," as they stood behind her. "Yes, it was," Kuyu remarked, "looks more like a small village." Naruto turned to face the stoic fox general and said, "That's why I wanted the deed now, Kuyu. I want you to gather the Fox clan and tell them to come here to their new and permanent home." "I thought you wanted them to stay where they are though, Naruto-sama," replied Kurama. "I originally did, Kurama, but after what happened the other day, I decided that for the sake of Sasuke's sanity I should remove them from their current location." Flashback. Since he was allowing Hinata to rejoin her team tomorrow, Naruto was taking a short break from training by strolling through the forest. It was then that he noticed a battered Sasuke hiding behind a tree, rocking back and forth with his head down. As his curiosity overcame him, he approached Sasuke slowly and gave him a shoulder tap, causing him to jump up and scan the area frantically until he spotted Naruto and became somewhat calmer. "Oh, it's just you, Naruto," sighed Sasuke as he walked away from the tree. "What happened to you, Sasuke?" "I'll tell you what happened to me. It's those damn foxes. They're everywhere, Naruto. When they first came to my district they would maul me in the morning every once in a while, but ever since about 2 months ago they started to knock me out and put a paralysis jutsu on me. So when I wake up I can't move and they start dressing me up as if I was a fucking giant doll. And then when they get bored playing dress up, they use me as a chew toy until the paralysis wears off," insanely screamed Sasuke as he showed the wounds left in his arm. "They've been doing this at least 2 or 3 times a week. I just can't take it anymore, Naruto. I think I'm starting to literally lose my mind." Sasuke pointed to 3 foxes behind Naruto and yelled, No, not again. Just get away from me, you damn foxes," before running away and yelling, "Ka-san," or even Sakura, "Just someone help me." Sasuke then vanished into the forest. There were no foxes when Naruto turned around, which caused him to smirk as he left. "I should probably move those foxes before what's ever left of Sasuke's mind completely deteriorates and he ends up in Konoha's insane asylum, no matter how much fun that might be," Naruto thought. One of the 3 fox demons that were hiding behind a tree from Naruto said, "So the next plan to get the silly human and drive him crazy is..." Everyone was sweating as Naruto concluded his story because of Sasuke's situation. The kanji for Rasengan was on a scroll that Kyuubi gave Naruto. "I'll do it as soon as possible, sir. And before I forget, here's the scroll you wanted from the house," he said. Naruto, Mocha, and Mizukage then departed, leaving Kurama and Kyuubi to complete their task by themselves. "We'll be leaving at 8 tonight, Mocha-chan and Mizukage-chan." Where are we going, Naruto-kun?" Naruto continued to walk while pretending not to notice the bright smile on Mocha's face and the slight smile on Mizuru's. "Earlier this morning you two asked if we could go to a club, and now I'm telling you we are leaving at 8 to go to one." Tazuna and Shino's group were strolling along a dirt path in the forest on a bright and sunny day, which was typical of Fire Country. Even though it hasn't rained in a few weeks, Hinata and Shino couldn't help but notice the puddle in the road as they were walking. They gave Shino a silent nod and continued walking, Kiba remaining unaware of the danger that was approaching. Shino then abruptly whispered to Kiba, "Protect the bridge builder," and he leapt to the right as Hinata spun around and extended her arm straight out, palm facing the puddle, and began chanting, "The one who reigns, mask of flesh, all creation in flap." Hinata and Kiba were hurried when two figures in black cloaks, both sporting metal-clawed gauntlets, leapt out of the puddle just as she turned around. Both assassins yelled, "Time to die," but, regrettably for them, they were caught off guard as soon as Hinata completed her incantation. Of wings, the one who carries the name of human Hado 33, Sukatsui, blue fire crashed down. With that, a sizable blue vortex of fire erupted, aimed at the now shocked and terrified assassins, who had no time to duck. One of the assassins was struck squarely, colliding with a tree and suffering severe burns, which caused him to black out. Soon after, the shock wave from the attack threw the other one to the side, and he was immediately sucked into a swarm of Shino's chakra-eating bugs, which swiftly ate up all of the enemy ninja's chakra while he was stunned. "That's not how I expected to win, but I'm not complaining," said Shino, who was Hinata's right voice. A bewildered Kiba yelled, "What the hell just happened? And how did you use that jutsu without any hand signs, Hinata?" "It wasn't a jutsu, Kiba, it was a secret clan technique called a Hado, which uses no hand signs but a special chant for it to be used." "Good work, Hinata. It wasn't how I expected it to be done, but we got them nonetheless. We also don't have to worry about them following us or reporting back to anyone, seeing as how my beetles will suck out all their chakra until they're dead. Now, as for you, Tazuna-san, what are you not telling us?" said Shino as he glanced at AF. "Well, you see, my village was taken over by a tycoon named Gato, who has brought my once prosperous village to nothing more than a poor and suffering one, because it only helps his shipping business since we can't trade with the outside world now. But if I finish the bridge I'm constructing, then I can bring back hope and trade to my village. Of course I understand that I lied to you and that you're perfectly in your right to turn back, but if you do I'll probably be killed and my daughter will curse the Leaf Village while my grandson cries at night going, 'Where's my grandpa?' Everybody in the room started to perspire as Tazuna cried, and then my village will continue to suffer as Gato bleeds them dry, while feigning tears." With a sigh they all said, "We'll help." "Excellent, then let's go." "Before we go though, Tazuna-san, you must know that we cannot ensure your safety from this point on, because unlike what you might think on how easily we stopped the ninja just now, you should know it was only a fluke because we caught them by surprise. If it was a more straightforward battle between us and them, considering they were obviously more experienced than we, it probably wouldn't have been as easy to take them down. So do you understand the severity of this mission, Tazuna?" asked Shino with widened eyes. "Yes, I do, and I am grateful." They all left to Wave Country once more after saying, "Then let's keep going so we can get you home before it get you home sooner than later." A tall man, about 6 feet 2, sitting on a coach, asked, "So the demon brothers failed, did they, Haku?" He was wearing loose purple pants, no shirt, black untidy hair, bandages around his mouth, a mist headband with a slash through it, and a large zanbakuto in his right hand. "Hi, Zabuza-sama," a boy wearing a light green kimono-style shirt, brown samurai pants, long black hair tied in a bun, and a hunter ninja mask said. "So did you get any information on them?" "All I received is that they're from Konoha and are genin, all from prestigious clans. But one caught my eye in particular, sir." Zabuza raised an eyebrow and asked, "Who?" "Her name was Hinata Kuchiki." Zabuza smiled evilly as he remembered the profile of a 12-year-old boy who had entered the bingo book as an Iwagakure S-class criminal. His name was. "Any relation to Naruto Kuchiki?" "Hi, she is his sister. I hope she's at least half as strong as her brother so I can have a good fight for when I attack them myself," Zabuza joked. After disembarking from a small rowboat that had taken them to one of the small islands that comprise Wave Country, Tazuna and company started their journey through the forest. Kiba told his K9 companion, "This mist is really thick, Haakamaru," and the dog yipped in agreement. "Almost unnaturally thick," Shino said. Nodding silently for Hinata to activate her Byakugan, her eyes widened instantly as she cried out, "Get down," and everyone did so, with the exception of the bridge builder, who was pulled down by Shino just before a massive Zanbakuto sailed over their heads and into a tree where a tall, menacing man landed. "So hand over the old man, I might let you kids go." Hinata stepped back abruptly as a terrified expression appeared on her face upon seeing this man. "Hinata, what's wrong?" "That's Momochi Zabuza Kiba. He's known as the Demon of the Mist and Master of the Silent Kill. Using the Hidden Mist Jutsu, he killed his entire graduation class and orchestrated a failed coup against the Mizukage. So you know who I am. Well, I'm flattered, and I also know a little about you too. Hinata Kuchiki, sister of the legendary Naruto Kuchiki, who is rumored to have killed the Mizukage that I failed to kill myself." Zabuza grinned. With her Byakugan activated and her fear gone, Hinata asked, "How do you know me?" as she placed her right hand on the hilt of her sword and assumed the fighting stance her brother had demonstrated. Before drawing the sword from the tree and emerging onto the surface of the nearby lake, Zabuza remarked, "I hope you're at least close to your brother in terms of power, but before we fight, let's get rid of the kids." "Hidden Mist Jutsu," Zabuza declared as he stood on the lake with the surrounding area shrouded in dense fog. As Shino watched her scan her surroundings with her Byakugan, he asked, "Hinata, where is he?" "Right here," Zabuza said. Appearing between Shino and Kiba, he then punched Shino in the stomach, sending him somewhere in a bush to the left, and kicked Kiba hard to the side, causing him to hit his head on a tree and lose consciousness. Zabuza said, "So kid, before I kill the old man, I want to see what the prestigious Kuchiki clan is capable of," turning away from a terrified Tazuna who was standing a few meters behind him. Hinata simply smirked as she sat there thinking of something. From behind Zabuza, a powerful and regal voice declared, "I shall be your opponent if you want to fight a Kuchiki." Zabuza's eyes widened as he turned around and looked into the eyes of the renowned Saku Kitsune himself. "You? But how, when?" he said, taking an unconscious step back.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.